cybersecurity and stuff. An update on, well, and then Bettina and I don't know if you want to talk about our little visit. We went to Salt Lake, also on Friday. Friday was a busy day for us. And I know the entire council has been aware of this because the League of Cities and Towns has been pushing the Dignity Index, which was a great focus on just really showing dignity to one another. And there's several steps to it. There's 8 steps, but Dr. Tim Shriver is the one that presented, and it was a 2-day event, actually, is what we learned on there, right? Like I said, I'll let you kind of speak a little bit more on that. Okay. In addition to that, I did actually go with the Parks and Rec and toured a couple of pools. Went down to the University of Utah and looked at, they have 2 pools down there, but it was primarily focusing on the 50-meter pool and also the air quality and the circulation system that they had there that was very interesting. And I got to tell you, it was, well, you didn't smell anything in there. You didn't realize you was in the pool, so it was nice. Then we also went down to Skyline High and looked at their facility, so that was kind of interesting.
Are they building theirs, or has it been there? Because I know Skyline's being all redone.
Skyline, so this pool is, they built it on the school side.
Oh, okay.
This is the first year of operation, because actually the school's still under construction, a lot of it.
Oh, I know,
They're
it's
rebuilding
tore
a lot
up.
of that, so, but at least the pool part is updated. Probably the biggie that I kind of keep you guys abreast on is the homeless. The homeless update. I can tell you that last night we had a COG meeting, and past Senator Wayne Niederhauser came in and presented to COG, because once the task force got, quote, dissolved, and we did not meet the state requirements, it actually went to the county. The county needed to kind of make sure that they work with the state in coming up with a plan. So last night they actually presented the plan that Wayne Niederhauser presented the plan to COG, which is the Council of Government, which is all your mayors for all of Davis County and several other entities. They actually presented the plan that they're going to take to the state task force board that has to vote on it. So technically it's not in play yet until that task force adopts it. But interesting enough, they came back with remember before I told you guys we had 3 plans. First plan was the bus, second plan was the portable tent idea, and then the third plan was to use existing facilities and alternate them. So ironically, the plan that got presented last night was kind of plan C. So the overarching premise of this is that they're going to, and this is for your code blue, is primarily what it's focused on, is they'll identify the Presbyterian Church up in Fruit Heights as the #1 spot to kind of work code blue. And then they identified 3 other locations throughout the county that will be the alternate spots and may rotate depending on what functions are taking place at the church. And those 3 spots are the Clearfield Senior Center. This was in order of priority. The second spot was, I think it said Kaysville. And I got the impression, the way it was worded, you weren't quite sure what location they were saying, but I'll do my own interpretation. I think it might be the inspection center, the old inspection center, but I'm not positive on that. And then the third location is Valley View Golf Course. So those are the 3 main, or that's the plan for this year on how we'll handle code blue. And again, like I said, it's what's in play right now until it gets adopted.
It doesn't sound like very many people use code blue.
Well,
Valley View Golf Course, good hell.
so
barely fit in 4 drunk golfers and
How are they gonna, how are you gonna find the Presbyterian Church in Fruit Heights?
So I probably need to finish that statement,
Yeah.
sorry. So the way
it's the only one with you.
the way that they'll be able to get the homeless folks to these warming centers is they've identified different spots throughout the county on where they'll pick them up. So I think 3 of the locations are Walmarts, and I can't remember the other one for sure, but so Layton Walmart will be one of the locations in that vicinity on where they'll pick up these folks and take them to whichever of those locations happen to be for that night. But like I said, the primary focus is going to be with the church. And the way that the county's going to, they're basically going to provide the cots and the bedding, and they will wash everything down, obviously, the very next day, so that they'll be prepared should they have another night in play. But in addition to that, this is an opportunity for folks that are CERT certified, that if they want to help in those areas, because they'll be serving them, a meal, 2 meals basically, an evening meal and then a morning meal. And they'll utilize those folks that are CERT certified that want to volunteer. And from what I understand, they already have a list of about 40 people that are willing to do that. So I know we've got a big CERT volunteer program here, and we haven't really promoted it, but I don't know if it's gone out to those folks that are certified and are willing to call the county and get on that list. So anyway, that was a huge update, I think, and it's making progress.
Just one question.
Sure.
I apologize for the ignorance, but in a code blue, you go out and talk to the people,
So,
right? You don't just send out a warning or something. You go and find the people and ask them if they would like to have someplace to go. Is that right?
so where we have not had it in the county up till this, well, technically last year we had it
Yeah.
as well, but we primarily used the hotel vouchers and tried to get folks to go to the other centers.
Yeah, but
But now, this year, what will happen is, word of mouth will travel fast with these guys, because they kind of take care of each other. But the whole code blue is actually identified from the state.
right.
They're the ones that will say that we're in a code blue situation. And the dates on that are from October 15th until April 30th. So anytime during that span, if the temperatures get below 18 degrees now, last year it was at 15 or below. They've now changed the temperature, so it's 18 or below. So once the temperatures, they see that that's going to be, at that level, then the state's going to issue it. And they issue it early enough in the day. Because last year, I did put myself on the alert system so that I knew when that was happening. And they alert you early enough in the day to where you can respond. So in this case, we'll respond, but to get the word out to the actual individuals,
Because
that's
you're
gonna
supposed
take a
to
minute.
go to the individual and ask. It's not a,
It's purely volunteer.
yeah.
It's all volunteer.
Okay, and I get that, and I knew that, but my question is, if I go to somebody under the viaduct and say, do you want to go to a shelter, and they say, yeah, well, it's at Walmart.
No, the pickup location.
That's what I mean, the pickup, in order to get there, you gotta go to Walmart. Well, what if they're like 5 miles away? That's, okay, that was my
Well-
concern. It's like, the idea is good, but have we thought through the whole idea? 'Cause if
So,
I gotta walk 5 miles at 10:30 at night and it's cold, I don't know.
so here's, like I said, it's gonna take a learning curve, obviously, the first year.
Sure, yeah.
Because, yes, the pickup time will probably be around 7 PM. So they're gonna need to know, okay, if I wanna get somewhere, I better be in the general area for pickup by 7. And then too, I mean, again, this is, you know, the county, it's gonna be a heck of a learning curve this first year, but I know that the county through the sheriff department and most likely will trickle down us to all of our police force as well, is, you know, they're gonna also help spread the word to these folks so that they know where the locations are to pick up.
But
This was all just presented last night, so, I mean, this is
Because last time,
fresh hot off the words.
last year, times to go out were like 2 in the morning.
No, that's your pit count. That's when we were trying to identify who they were.
Okay,
So-
okay, that's what was confusing me, is
Okay.
why would we go at 2 in the morning if they gotta meet at Walmart at 7?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
so, anyway, so, I mean, like I said, it's just gonna take everybody, you know, taking ownership on this to kind of help those folks out. The only other update I'd say is sewer district, and I know Steve Jackin's probably happy about this. I know they're wrapping up the construction on Hillfield Road. Are they done this week, right? Is the target week?
Heard that's the target.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know that the update that I got in the sewer board meeting was they felt very confident in meeting the deadline this week, so hopefully that will be the case.
Good.
That will be one less construction zone right here for now. Okay, I'm gonna turn the time over to the council for any updates. So who wants to lead out here?
You don't want to lead out?
I don't have any.
Okay,
Okay.
All you.
that's all me. So to piggyback on what the mayor mentioned about the Dignity Index meeting last Friday, the goal of that is really to kind of start with encouraging dignity and humanity in politics. And so that's why they've come to the league, and Tim Shriver met, he was a speaker for one of our conventions a couple of years ago. I think all of us were just like,
He was,
yes,
he was a candidate,
Yeah.
Yes.
the
or
candidate.
is, not
Yes.
was. Yes, okay.
And so has a partnership with the University of Utah, and they're trying to come up with ways to really implement, you know, almost like a scorecard. They didn't really talk much about this there, but you know how teachers and doctors and you have scorecards all over the place for how well somebody is doing, or you know, what your voting record is, things like that. To try and come up with a way to help average citizens know what is Tina Smith Edmondson's Dignity Index. You know, like how do your elected leaders operate when it comes to politics? And it's going to be a while, like it's a long game, but the idea is that when you put your efforts, your resources behind folks who are operating respectfully the way that you would want them to, then we can hopefully change the face of how politics operates, and not just have money going to, you know, either extreme and the loud, you know, not necessarily the way you want things to go kind of statements and ads and things of that nature. So it's a really, really cool concept, and I think it's great. We'll see we'll see if we can move the needle. Utah is like the first state that is trying to work on this in this way, but there are other states who are now trying to get on board, which I think is cool. So we'll see how that goes.
He was probably one of the best keynote speakers
I agree.
I've ever.
Well, he's got such a great message, and unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's too bad it couldn't be received at the top federal level and then filtered down, but in this case, it's the old theory of bottom up.
It
It's the
works
bottom up
better-
theory that's
it
gonna
works
have to
better
take place.
going up.
Yeah,
Coming down gets watered up too much.
Yeah,
Costs
that's
too
true.
much money.
Plus, it's individual citizens who are,
Right.
you know, donating $5, $10 to whatever they're donating to. So the other report I have is Communities That Care. We had our community board meeting earlier this week, and we are focusing on, we have these youth listening sessions These sessions are parent consent, youth consent, and the purpose is to understand what the concerns are with the youth in our community and make sure that the programs we're offering are meeting their needs and will help them to, be successful. And so we've had 3 of those so far, and we have some feedback from those. It's really insightful and interesting feedback. We still have 3 more, a couple that we have scheduled and 2 more that we're trying to get scheduled. We are also focusing on recruitment as we always do, but we're thinking about a 100 Cup campaign where instead of doing this full-on mass recruitment effort, where as you're talking to someone, you can give them information about what the CTC does. And with the county participation, we have our CTC, North Davis, South Davis, and our CTC in the county, and our leads are working together to do orientations. So they have a series of orientations scheduled. So as new people come on board and want to participate, there's already an orientation scheduled that you can give them information and kind of sign them up. So that process, we've been working that process for the past few months, and it's been going really, really well. We had a new member attend this past meeting, and
Good.
so
Yeah, that's good.
things are going well there. The last thing, I know Clint said he didn't have anything, but we do have LPC coming up on Monday. And there will be an additional discussion on homelessness after that, where we're trying to also help address the issue, but at more of a legislative level, where we're looking at how we can help craft or encourage or inform legislation to kind of help make sure that the cities are not negatively affected with all that needs to go on with regard to how to serve our homeless population. So I plan to be there in person or via Zoom, but they were very interested in having Layton's perspective, and so I know a number of us in this on the council have been contacted. So.
Okay, do you have any updates?
Just the bash, the Halloween bash, which is today's Thursday, tomorrow.
night.
It's gonna happen, rain or shine. If it's raining, it'll be at Central Davis. If it's shining or cloudy, it'll be here where it normally is over by the. And they felt like it would 90% sure it would be at the amphitheater, but just in case. So Tyson, you owe me one on that one. Okay.
Maybe 2 if you'll make that announcement in the regular meeting as well, so thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
let's make it 3 and we'll call it even. And the other thing is, I heard, I don't watch the news much, mainly because I don't agree with what they're talking about, but they made mention that Clearfield is going to build like a homeless 600, 7 or 1,000,
Really?
yeah.
I haven't
There
heard
was
that.
that, and they're also gonna put in office space, and there was one other thing, but I didn't, they said that at first, and they said the second was office, and the third was like a homeless bedding. And that came from the state, not the county. So that was just I know they were looking for a place to do something, and it's by the UTA.
Are you talking about that whole development that they're doing near
Uh-huh.
the front runner station?
Right by the front runner station.
They did announce, they had a big announcement. I saw pictures, though I didn't see any,
Yeah.
support. They had different,
But that was part of it, I remember there was like either 600 or 1,000 beds, and like a ton of space for offices. I mean,
I know I saw
Talked about a vertiport,
housing,
too.
but I didn't.
huh?
And a vertiport.
A
vertiport.
Was that a
Oh,
part of it, too?
vertiport, well, of course.
Let's think
We're
that's
all
part
gonna
of
have
it.
vertiports.
I did see housing, but I didn't see housing connected to homousness. But I
Yeah,
didn't.
but they mentioned that
It
specifically.
might be just
Yeah.
subsidized,
Mhm.
is what I'm
I
thinking. It's
don't
probably
know.
more your subsidy
Yeah.
But
program.
it was, anyway, it was on the news, so I thought I'd bring it up.
Alrighty. Okay, Tyson, I know Dave covered for you. Zach, do you have anything?
Nothing for me.
Okay. All right, well then let's go ahead and move on with our agenda items then, because we do have, three more items to cover. Tonight, we're honored to have the Young Automotive Group here to give us a presentation on their intentions, and so, I don't want to waste any more time. I'm not sure which one's,
I'll get up.
who's gonna present, but it looks like it's gonna be, Spencer Jr., right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
might as well. I am not a professional presenter, so no making fun of me.
Do they
I'm
have
just a
those?
car salesperson. What was
Do
that?
they have professional presenters?
I've seen some.
Okay.
So let me
They're
pass.
the ones that do it all the time.
Yeah,
You'll be
Wow.
refreshing.
so I'm gonna kind of pass these around so everybody gets a copy.
That's all set.
Yeah, that whole set. Make sure I keep this.
Whoa.
Make sure I got them all.
That's okay. That's it, easy.
Okay, so site plan, different orders, so I gotta make sure I'm correct here. Overall site plan. And then, can we get something, can we pull up Google Earth or county site? This one.
The days we passed on over here, so they can leave a set, and
Two.
then you can leave two set for the others that are not
Alex, you got one? Chad, do you need? We can try.
You already have this under Dave.
Thank you.
These are nice prints. You must have a copy shop or something.
We do.
Print shop.
We have a print shop.
You have a print shop.
I know, I had to give you a
Right
shout out.
here
I
in
knew you
Layton.
did.
Any more copies?
I think.
Yeah, he's gonna do it. I told him just to make sure you keep them later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just thought I'd get up and just show a bunch of pretty drawings and then just leave. Okay, I'll just start here. So I just want to go over our full build out of what we're thinking here over the next couple years. And so if you take this first site plan, the big one here, and if you could go to Young Kia, you'll see that and kind of that site. Okay, so we're talking this whole site, so our Buick GMC store here, our little detail shop, our marketing building here, and then our Kia building here. Ramblin' Roads is right here, Paces. So we own Ramblin' Roads, the HIP building, and then this property down to the detention, okay? So we own all that property there, and currently have a Kia store and the Buick GMC store. So we bought just recently, or a couple years ago, the Trubis group, so the Audi, Volkswagen, and Chrysler store. And we made an agreement with Volkswagen and Audi that we would separate them. So as part of the approval process, we have to separate them and move. So we're gonna take Audi out. Now, Audi wants out, and they wanted to go to Farmington, because Farmington's where Mercedes is, and it's kind of, that's what their market study said. So with the agreement with Audi, we have to move Audi out of that building. So it's currently dualed with Volkswagen, we've got to move it out, and we'd like to put it in Layton. If you look at Genesis, there's a Genesis kind of rendering here. We also want to move Genesis, so currently we have a Hyundai Genesis store in Ogden. And it's also dualed, and we have to de-dual it as part of an approval, again, with the manufacturer. So Genesis is a standalone, it would be compared to Lexus of Toyota. So the Hyundai, the family that owns Hyundai, it's their personal project, and it's their personal, this is their baby. It's gonna be a dominant force in the luxury world. So Genesis, the Western region dealer development guy, that's what his job is, assigned to put together points of where the dealerships go. He came out to Farmington Station, stayed for 4 days in the hotel. Went over to the Mercedes store, spent 4 hours there, walked all the properties and says, we want Genesis in Farmington. So with that said, both Genesis and Audi have said, we want to be in Farmington. But with the property, so now if you go down to this main site plan and kind of what we were thinking, this is what we went to the manufacturers with, both Audi and Genesis, and say, we want to keep these manufacturers, we want to keep Audi in the city, and we want to move Genesis here from Ogden. We want to put it right in this property where we are all at. It's right across the street from our headquarters within the eye shot there. And so we want to build out, and if you can kind of see this, sorry, it's a little hard, but our Buick GMC stores here. Next to that would be the brand new Genesis store, and that's this one here, okay? So be on the you can see on the freeway as well.
Yeah.
And then next to it, it says existing building, that's our marketing, so Oz Marketing, my brother Oliver, he owns that company, and that's what operates. How many employees do you have in there?
40.
40?
Wow.
We have a little strip mall that we lease out, that little print shop. Next to the Oz Marketing building is our existing Kia building. We finished that, and Chad, was that 2016? I think it was 16, I think. So 2016, and from 16 to now, we've way outgrown the building. So we don't have the service room and the service capacity to service all the cars, or the customers that bought new Kias. So what our proposal is we want to build a brand new Kia store further south on the property we own to increase our service capacity to take care of the customer. And then what we would do is then we would take our existing Kia facility, which is a beautiful facility, and retrofit or make it into an Audi. So this is the actual our Kia building, just retrofitted with the Audi kind of skin. And then there's some inside elements. We've got to spend quite a bit of money to make this look Audi. So we'd first build a new Kia store, and then we'd move Audi out of the Volkswagen Audi store into the Kia store once it's already made and done. And at the same time, building this brand new Genesis store. And again, this is like a Lexus, and this is the premium brand that's coming up. Okay, so that's kind of the future projects that talking about right there on that corridor with the freeway by our Kia store. Okay, so the next one, and you'll see the renderings of like our new Kia store and how that looks. It's going to be beautiful. Be right off the freeway, you can see it. So you can kind of see that rendering. Okay? Okay, so now let's go to kind of the purpose of this meeting, and it's this site plan here. Not this site plan. It is this one right here. Okay, and we got that. Okay, so that's the current campus, and if you could go to that campus, the Volkswagen Audi campus, just because it kind of I can show it a little bit better. Okay, so this is the purpose of this meeting. So we want, so as an agreement with Chrysler, we said when we bought it, we'll tear this down. We're going to build a new shop, a brand new dealership. And if you go to the rendering that we have, it's kind of a dual showroom. It's a separate Jeep showroom and then a separate Chrysler Jeep Dodge or Chrysler Dodge Ram. So it's kind of two separate showrooms and then a shared service drive and a large shop. So it's essentially kind of two stores in one with a shared shop. And that will go here. It's a little weird because we have to face this building because of the service shop here. We will first have to build our service shop right here so we can continue to operate out of this building. And then once the service is built, then we'll tear down this building and operate out of this. So it's a phasing thing that we're kind of coming up against. And part of that is this detention pond here. So what our goal is, and on this site plan, you can see it's kind of comes in right here. So it comes in off of 1300, right here across the street from Kohl's. And we've got chambers that we bought. We spent $900,000 on chambers to put that detention pond underneath ground and to asphalt over it. Just ease to get in and out of that property. If the city would convey it to us, we would maintain it, we'd bury it, we'd asphalt it, and it would look beautiful. If you go look at it now, it's kind of it's a blighted site. So our whole goal there is, if the city could help us out with that detention pond, so we can make this whole site fit. So part of this is the body shop will be, it'll be remodeled, probably spend $1 million, $2 million to remodel it. The Volkswagen store right here will be completely remodeled as well into their new image. We'll probably spend $4 to $5 million easy just remodeling that. And then of course, building a brand new building there. So if I look at all the projects that we're bringing, today, the Kia store produces $92 million in revenue, sales tax revenue, or top dollar. The Volkswagen Audi's at 58 million. And we'll have copies of this. We'll have copies. I've got copies of all this, and Chanel has it too. The new store, so Genesis, just as I think a modest projection, it'll do 58 to 60 million a year. And then total construction, what we're gonna spend on all these buildings, on everything we're doing is over $100 million. Kelly, what would you say the close to dollar amount?
120.
$120 million. So, again, we had to fight Genesis, and it was a fight, Genesis and Audi, to keep those franchises here. We want them here. Farmington wants them, and they want to incentivize us like crazy to put them there. We would prefer to stay in Layton City, and we prefer to leave them right here where we're based out of, and to bring the tax basis here in Layton City. So, really, that's what we're doing. We do appreciate the city, the partnership for years and years, and I think the private-public partnership that we've done over the years, Alex, I'm looking at you, it's worked. Has it worked?
I think so, yeah.
I think it's worked. It's changed that whole Main Street, what it looks like. And then I just want to throw one more thing. If you could go down to our power sports store in Layton, and this is something that we've talked about too that we would like to do. I don't have it in here, but we have our power sports store right here. Kind of a cool mural, if you haven't seen it, there's a really cool mural. It would be so nice to take this area right here, which is currently in a CDA, RDA or something, right? It's in an RDA, and develop that into something that's cool, like restaurants, bars, for all these multi-level, all these multi-family housing, something that's there. If you go to like Austin, Texas, or if you go downtown, they have that. And that would be amazing right there, if we could do something. We could get partners in there. You got the Barlows, you got us, you got the Garns. We could do something that would be amazing for all these new residents coming in that they can walk to. So, I mean, all of this stuff we want to create and make the city beautiful. And we're partners, and we just need some help on the conveyance of that detention pond. So, any questions there?
I'm
am I okay to?
I'm curious, because I see that you've got Chanel from the county here.
Yes.
So what,
Am I okay to come up?
sure.
So I just want to start off by saying I'm a neutral party. I was asked to be here today just to look at options as far as, how we can work this out, and if there was any way that the county could participate and help out both the city and the Youngs. Again, I will support any one of our 15 cities and any economic opportunity that comes to them. So this is really just more informational and just to clarify on retail incentives. And so I kind of have a flow chart that I will pass out to everybody. So this is from the League of City and Towns. This bill was passed back in 2022, where it kind of prohibited some retail incentives based on the legislation, and this is really just to clarify. I don't know how many more.
We'll just make a pile for those who aren't here.
Perfect. So really, again, what this whole bill's premises was around was direct incentives to retailers. Take, for example, RC Willey. We'll use RC Willey as a good example of a direct incentive, right? RC Willie was located in Syracuse. They relocated to Layton, and that was also done with county participation by a direct incentive to a retailer. This bill aims so that no longer can retailers be incentivized through direct payments. However, within a CRA, you can still do public infrastructure for a retailer. So as we're talking about a detention pond, if you want to look at this, you can start out and you say, can a city offer a sales or property tax payment to a person, business for the purpose of introducing or incentivizing them to locate or relocate a retail facility within an area of the state? Go down. Does the project incentivize have a retail component? Yes. So if you just follow the flow chart, right? And then it outlines all of the different purposes. Does are any of these purposes? So development, construction, renovation, or operation of public infrastructure or structured parking facility. Demolition of an existing facility, assistance under local Main Street or historic preservation program, environmental mitigation, emergency aid, public safety, water conservation, and energy efficient. So if you check yes to any of those boxes, yes, you can offer an incentive. Does that make sense? So what we're saying is, based on all of our research around a CRA for this area, I would recommend to the commission that we would support it from a county level, and a way to offset maybe some of the costs to the Youngs, as well as the city being able to get the detention pond or sell the detention pond, more or less. So this is a public infrastructure use, and we can set the base year, in 2024. Any of that tax increment collected, maybe over a 10-year time span, we would be able to say, let's cap it at $2 million for the cost that the Youngs are going to be spending to, asphalt, bury the, what are they called? The chambers. So that's kind of one of the things I just wanted to present. And then, we're just here to support both the city and the Youngs, and, we would be happy to participate if this was something the city wanted to look at.
Steve, you mentioned when we talked about this, does UDOT have any interest in?
UDOT doesn't own
Only-
the detention pond, but
But the water?
A large part of I-15 actually flows through that detention pond. So they would have to be party to any agreement that we have to ensure that water can still flow through.
I believe there was a working meeting that they were invited to that UDOT said that they would participate. Didn't UDOT originally own this land and gave it to the city?
So,
In our one working meeting, UDOT was present and agreed that this makes sense.
so the city has to initiate this CRA?
Correct. It's the RDA, yeah. So the agency has to.
The RDA has to initiate a request for
To the taxing entities, which would be the county,
okay,
school district, mosquito abatement. Again, most of the time, so especially on this type of project, you're not gonna have a problem with the school district, I would assume, just based on, maybe not, but, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking out of turn.
Yeah, you are speaking out of turn.
Yeah, I can't speak for them, but usually, like, if the county was to participate, most of the time, if it's a good project, usually the school district will follow as long as it's not impacting their revenue and or adding more homes. Again, that's just my understanding. I'm not speaking on behalf of them, so. But I will say the county, from our taxing entity and the library, we are willing to participate. And I would definitely recommend to the commission that this is something, it's a low dollar amount that we're looking at. And just based on those numbers alone, to do $2 million over a 10-year time frame, I think isn't a big deal for the county.
and you're saying the total annual sales tax is 120 million?
Yeah, so whatever's listed right here, these are straight from financial statements.
The 120 is.
So the-
improvements.
That's 100 million.
So 100 million,
Okay, I
Total
just written that
project.
number down, so that's why.
So just from Kia, Genesis, and
Volkswagen Audi?
Yeah, is over,
2
it's,
million a year.
yeah, 2 million, it's close to 210 million
So.
annually.
Yeah, annually, so that means the city gets what, the
1%.
1%, so it'd be 2 million.
$2 million on
2
an
million a year.
annual basis, correct. Did you want anything else? I wrote a memo, it just kind of outlines retail, like how it goes about on, statute as well as following the flow chart from the league.
So, okay, the other options that we have that we can do is not build Dodge, not build a Chrysler store, and we'll move the Dodge Jeep store into our Volkswagen store. So we won't build it, we'll just knock that down and use the property. We'll move, we can move Kia and we can move Genesis to Farmington. I'm just saying,
And Audi.
and yeah.
What is the CRA again? So what does that stand for?
It's Community Reinvestment Area.
It's another word for RDA.
Yes.
It's the
Yeah,
term.
it's the new one, yeah.
You have to create one.
So two,
You have to create it,
yes.
yeah. It's a negotiated with each of the taxing areas now.
And
So this pretty much replaces what we used to be able to do direct, like, I guess what you're saying, what we did with RC Willie's, but now, since the law changed, now we have to go through the CRA?
Yeah.
My understanding
It's
is
the
right?
same
I'm just
it's
trying
the
to-
same process. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just, now you can't incentivize a retailer directly, right? So you
Right.
can't, because that's putting cities against each other, right? As your,
Yeah.
one city's offering $1 million directly to a retailer and another city is offering 100,000. It's just bidding them against each other. So that was taken out, but when it comes to public infrastructure, you can incentivize for public infrastructure and capture that increment.
Okay, and so what, if I could be so bold to ask this question, I mean, I'm sitting here hearing what you're saying, and you're saying that on behalf of the county, you will offer this to whatever city's willing to initiate it. Am I right?
I wouldn't say that. Not whatever city is willing to initiate
In
it.
other words, if you're
If it's
You're right.
public,
Layton against Farmington, right? I mean, both of us would try to go after that funding from it.
well, it would have to be, again, public infrastructure. So this is all about public infrastructure. So a detention pond
That's the
is public
difference.
infrastructure.
That could-
That is where we would only do a CRA is for those types of public infrastructure if it's a retail component.
But would they be greenfielding down there? So technically, they could go after it too then, if they're
If they had to
building
put in
long ground,
sewer,
right?
they had to put in, correct. So like,
Road, sewer, gutter, electric, demo.
Yeah. so I've done, the county, we have one that's in the works right now. It's a smaller project area, but it's a big impact, it's a smaller city. And again, it's all around public infrastructure. It has a retail component, but it is sewer and water that they're looking at capturing. So.
Okay.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Anything else from me? Any questions?
No. Come on.
Perfect.
The only, the big thing is we do have $900,000 of chambers we bought 8 months, 9 sitting there that we have done, we can't do anything with. So it's like, it's 900 grand sitting and we've got to do something.
Okay. All right.
But thank you very
Yeah,
much.
no,
And
this
we
was
do
a-
appreciate the partnership and.
I think this is
No.
pretty informative. You guys have any other additional
just
questions?
With
Clint?
these chambers, what are they for?
So
Underground.
yeah, underground, so
Okay, what are they for?
so it takes the water and slows the flow and so it can hold the water,
Okay.
so it can be released.
But then it allows you to blacktop over the top where you get your parking.
Yeah, so it'll be
this is for the
blacktop.
detention basin, right?
So we've done it at most of
We
our.
have many of those.
Chambers?
We have chambers, like Centerville, that whole front parking is all
And then you
chambers.
can put
We
parking
have
lot
two
on top.
Yeah. I didn't get one.
Oh, so Spencer, question for you. On the chambers that you have sitting there, you're saying you spent $900,000 on those, is that just to accommodate the
Yes.
25? Okay, we've had like 4 or 5 other of these that have been built for, based on cubic foot capacity, much less than that.
Well, we built stuff and that's all we do. We built dealerships for,
We have 3 different basins going right now. I'd compare apples to apples, but
yeah, if you guys thinking.
so like on Riverdale Road, we have over $4 million worth of chambers sitting on Riverdale Road. But it's on Riverdale Road, it's $40 a square foot dirt. So we can't have detention basins, we have to have asphalt.
Centerville City, our big power sports store, that entire front parking lot is all chambers. Buried. You never know.
There is a different system. If you have plenty of room, you can do a shallow system that's about half the money, but it takes up twice the space. So like when we're in rural, like Morgan, it's less than half actually, as long as you have the room. But then it's all just engineered calcs. It's for the 100-year storm, it's for the 10-year. You've seen it, you've approved them in the city.
Right, our engineers understand that.
Yes. So prior to the 22 statute, you guys put a program, we called it an RDA back then, right, Chad?
Yeah.
That was prior to 2022. You did an incentive program for us to come to Kia, and part of that was a chamber water system. There's one sitting at that
We
location.
need one more set of those there.
I'll just leave that whole box and there's.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, that works. All right, well, thank you. We appreciate you
Okay,
coming in
thank you.
and kind of letting us understand the big picture here and what's
And
at
if you guys
stake.
want to come use our facilities, please do.
Especially to
Or
purchase
headquarters,
cars.
please. Or not to.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, well, thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move our meeting along. Yeah, thank you. We do. Okay, and Steve, I believe you're up next, which is an interlocal agreement between Layton City and Weaver Basin District, Water District.
That's why he's here.
Calm down.
Don't tell me where it is.
I won't. Come here a second.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, thank you for the time tonight. Just wanted to touch on real quickly an interlocal cooperation agreement we've been working with Weaver Basin Water Conservancy District. Resolution 24-29. So recently, Weaver Basin applied for a infrastructure grant from the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, and part of the grant was, or the purpose of the grant was to conserve water resources in the area through the elimination of water loss and optimized water conveyance is the term. So basically we wanted to put the water to better use and to not have so much of it lost. One of those things is we've got a big area of flood irrigation still within the city in the Holmes Creek service area, so kind of southeast side of town there off of south of Gentile, that kind of area east of Fort Lane, Fairfield. So part of the grant was that we needed to come up with a way to, or Weaver Basin needed to come up with a way to optimize the system and improve the water use in this area. So working with Weaver Basin, they approached the city and said, hey, what kind of projects do you think and anticipate that would be beneficial for this grant? And so we came up with 2 options for them, or 2 ideas that they ultimately decided would be a good idea. The first one is a project where we will complete one of our master plan water projects that will connect the Holmes Creek Reservoir to Andy Adams Reservoir so that the city can use that water through either reservoir into the pressurized water system. So that project is approximately $1.2 million. It's a little bit tough to see, but Andy Adams Reservoir is at the top of the screen. It would come through the Peacefield area and out to Gentile Street where our former water tanks used to be. The pressurized line stops right here at Gentile at that place. So we put in an 18-inch pipe that will flow water from the Holmes Reservoir into Andy Adams. It'll allow the city to use that water as it needs to pressurize the water system as we go forward. Again, that portion of this is approximately $1.2 million. The second component is there's a lot of flood irrigation that happens on some fairly small parcels within the city. I think you've all seen the water that runs down Fort Lane when they flood irrigate, and so we wanted to also incentivize some of these urban, I'll call them urban flood irrigators that have rather small properties to switch over to the culinary water system in that area. There's not enough users to justify going out and building an entire secondary pressurized system, but we do have enough culinary water in that area as our master plan to incentivize them to move over. So we're offering to purchase their water shares that would be associated with the ground that they would need to water. They would receive a payment for those water shares. They would receive a payment for a cost to put in a sprinkler system, so they would connect to the culinary system with a pressurized sprinkler system, then water from that in the future. And then also there's a price differential because our water rates are a little bit higher than the current flood irrigation rates. And so we offered them 10 years worth of the cost difference between being on what is the current rate for our water and the current rate for the flood irrigation that they're on. The pressurized system costs more to operate and run because it's pressurized. The benefits we see to this is that they've got some smaller areas that are not necessarily very efficient, and ultimately at some point the Holmes Creek Irrigation Company's got to decide if it's really worth operating for 50 or so properties. So
Can I jump in with the questions? So this was when we worked on the Case Creek project and the water in that reservoir.
Yeah.
Talked about a connection. This is a new connection. This is what?
This is part of our master plan.
This was the connection we were talking about.
This is the connection. There's off the screen here, there's a pipe that goes all the way up Gentile Street into the Holmes Reservoir that was a phase 1 of that project. This is the final phase to get those two connected.
And then water out west.
And then water out west is in that pipeline, or it will be in that pipeline you've seen going down Gordon Avenue. That's part of that big project as well. So
that's cool.
This is a really, really important connection to the master plan as well. There's a few others that we're trying to make, and we're trying to get the funding to take care of those. So as far as the people who are eligible, this is just a real small map here, but there's about 40 parcels that are under 2 acres. That was our goal, was anything under 2 acres that wasn't ag use. So if it's somebody's home and they're watering, these are the eligible parcels that would be offered that funding based on the size of the lot and how many acre feet of water that they would need to have the city purchase in order for them to then transfer over. The agreement would be that they would become customers of Layton City with the culinary water for outdoor use, and then they would basically be selling their water rights or shares to us in exchange for that. And then we would,
By selling their shares.
yeah,
Okay.
their shares would then become pertinent to their ground, and then the city would provide that water to.
Can they get a credit? I mean, I don't.
A credit.
I don't know why you
He's
would want one,
explaining
but
how they would be compensated.
they just be compensated. You wouldn't say, we're buying it for this, and so you've got water credit until you run out of money on your credit?
No, we don't want to.
We don't do that.
We don't want to do that. We're saying we're going to
Okay.
pay you for the water.
We'll give you the
share,
money and then you do what you
and
want.
then you do
pay
what you
us.
want with
Okay.
it, and then
That-
there's
that's
the fee, or we're paying for what is our anticipated cost of a sprinkler system to be installed.
Sure.
The city would create any kind of connections and meters that need to happen for that
For it.
service, and then there is the cost differential component where we said, hey, for 10 years, this is the cost that we
Right.
see, and we'll pay you this
This
10 years
water.
worth, so that will help offset any concern
Okay.
that somebody might have.
So I have a question then,
Yeah.
knowing that these are they would then convert to culinary water, then they would automatically be in the tier, the upper tier that you, instead of a 6,000 gallon use, you're up to, what was it, 10,000?
Yeah, so they would be,
So they would fall
they
under
would
that,
fall
plus,
into the,
plus they have a 10-year,
well, we would just give them that payment, and they can use that payment to pay the difference if they want, or they can spend it however they feel like, but they would agree that they would just become a customer of the city's.
well, where does the 10-year option, I guess I'm trying to comprehend, what do you,
so
because I know that
currently-
they'd give more water,
Yeah, so
culinary, but then where does the 10-year come in?
So currently, the cost for the flood irrigation shares, I believe, is right around $100 a year for their shares, and we're
Okay.
charging $250 per
Oh,
year
okay,
for the
gotcha.
second. So we're saying, we'll give you the difference between those two, and say for 10 years, that's kind of where, you
And
know,
it's
we
a
felt
done
it
deal.
was fair, and then, but you're a customer, and if you choose to take that 10 years worth of payment and save it and pay it down, that's fine, or we just felt like 10
Sure,
years
man.
was a really long time to allow somebody to use or to have that culinary water, and we were hoping to incentivize some of these people to convert over, become
Right.
more efficient, at the same time receive value for their shares, and then also we were trying to keep them from saying, well, now I've got to go out and put in a sprinkler system that I've never had before, and so
Yeah.
that's where this grant money comes in. So we've actually sent letters out on those to say, hey, this is what the grant money is for, and Weaver Basin has asked that we help administer this and take care of it since it's in Layton. And so really Weaver Basin has the grant money, they will reimburse the city. Part of this agreement is that we will do the work to get them converted over. If they want to, we'll build a pipeline, and then the Weaver Basin will reimburse the city for any of the expenses that are qualified to take care of this,
So it's just those 40 homeowners identified there?
Yeah, the property owners that met the qualifications. And so if all of them took, you know, the offers, it would be roughly $765,000 for all of those costs. We're not sure we're gonna get that amount, but we're hoping that there'll be quite a few that do want to take that. Currently, we're not seeing a lot of, I guess, we've talked to 5 or 6 of them. One has actually already signed the agreement to say they're interested in doing this, but they have until November 1st, basically, to say we're interested, so that then the city and Weaver Basin get all the paperwork done before the end of the year to take care of it. So,
And if they don't want to,
then they don't, we're not forcing them to
they'll
do
still,
it, but
they'll
it is
still
a,
flood irrigate?
it is a one-time offer here that's grant money that will be gone once the grant is taken care of, so.
So you're dealing with the homeowners, are you dealing with the Case Creek Board at all? 'Cause
We've talked-
with
Holmes
Or
Creek,
not, I mean
yeah.
Holmes Creek, sorry.
We've talked to the Holmes
Holmes
Creek
Creek.
Board, but
And where are they at these days?
I mean, they don't have a problem with what we're doing here, but at the same time, they really, these are shareholders and they own the shares, and so they can make the decision for themselves. But we do have Wes Adams, who sits on the board for the city, and so, yeah, they're not, I wouldn't say that they're against it, but they really don't have any, you know,
There's no reason to do it.
there's no say for them to say, hey, you can't do this or you can't do
Right.
this. As the board, they just, they're the ones operating the system.
But are they
Does that make sense?
encouraging it all? Because I know
I
that
think-
that's,
I think
that's, you know,
most
I
of
mean, I
them
know
are.
that that whole system is, you know, quite costly for them, and a lot of questions have arisen over the years.
Yeah,
so-
I wouldn't say they're encouraging it, because I don't think it's their decision to make as the board members. They're saying, hey, it's your share, you do what you want with it, but,
But you have shared all this with that board,
but yes,
so that
we
they
have talked to
can, so that
them,
they're very well
yeah,
aware of it?
yeah,
Okay.
and Wes was in a board meeting with them and shared all of this, and so
Good.
they're very well aware of what we're trying to do here. And again, if they don't want to do it, we're not forcing anybody to do it, but this is the offer, and we feel like it's a very fair offer, and probably one that they won't ever see again in their time as shareholders. And obviously, the money has the deadlines to it.
So you've
it's
given them,
funding.
what, 30 days?
Yeah, we sent it out the first week of October, and we've given them 30 days to kind of make decisions. They've had time to call us, and so we've been talking with them, the ones that have called.
So it's still Holmes Creek water, but Layton City would own the water shares?
Yeah, and so then
That's
we
the transfer.
would be able to use the Holmes Creek shares where we need to in our system, and then if we needed,
Right.
yeah, we can just move the water around as we need to, as we operate the system.
Are they, back to the board question, are they seeing what happened with Case Creek and
Yeah.
in the future?
Yeah, I think they have. And again, there's some other shareholders that own substantial properties, but they're not part of this grant program, because that's not what the grant was for. The grant was to optimize some of these smaller properties and things, and they're,
So
yeah.
that just begs the question then, and I'm sure they're probably curious too. go through this step, then is the next step, the larger properties, and ultimately so that we can, obviously work with them like we have with the Weaver Basin.
Yeah, and eventually that's part of the process, but this specific grant was for
Okay.
these smaller properties, and we would hope that the larger properties are probably more primed for development when they come through instead of, we didn't want to just start putting culinary water on all of these large farms that are
Yeah.
still,
Well, that's why you have that ag
Culinary
optimization
Yeah,
program.
so, anyway, so the money has to be entitled by, or what's the, obligated, by the end of the year, and then it all has to be spent by the end of 2026. And so part of this agreement is that if the council chooses to adopt it tonight, it's planning to go before the board of Weaver Basin, I believe, on the 30th, and then from there we would move forward and march down this path. And we've already got the design on the project. We're working with our legal department on a couple of easements, and then we anticipate having a bid ready to go for that probably in the middle of December. So.
Last question, well,
Yeah.
maybe. Probably not. You said it's culinary water.
Yeah.
Layton's culinary water. Why not Weaver Basin secondary system?
Their
There's
system
no
doesn't extend
infrastructure.
down there, yeah, there's
There's
no
no
infrastructure, there's no pressurized
There's not-
secondary water down here, and the cost to go install that down here just it doesn't pencil out with everything else we're trying to do. So we're trying to optimize, like the master plan, those areas that make sense, but then, all of these other parcels that you see on the map that aren't blue are serviced by our culinary water system. So there's really just not a lot of incentive to go in there and put in those systems, so. Any other questions I can answer? We are recommending adoption of this, but obviously that's up to the council.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah,
So, a couple of questions. First of all, the $700,000 amount that you mentioned, is that just to purchase the water shares themselves?
no, that's to purchase the shares, also to pay for the sprinkler systems that are going in, to pay for any connections that we need to make and meters that would be installed for those sprinkler systems, and then also that 10-year differential cost.
Okay, so I think that answers my second question as well. A lot of the reason people still use gravity irrigation is because it's cheap, affordable, and they've done it for many years. So I just want to make sure there's no additional cost that these residents are going to have when they convert over to culinary. The sprinkler system is paid for above and beyond the purchase of the shares. That doesn't come out of the purchase of their water shares, correct?
Yeah, the intent is that the funding that we're providing will cover all of that and make them all essentially whole, but also they're now on the culinary system with the customers that are all around them with the culinary as well.
Plus they have 10 years paying what, the same
Yeah, the price differential there.
that they paid in the past. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know what the value of a Holmes Creek water share is now? I know it's kind of it's usually, water shares are usually an agreement between the buyer and the seller. So.
Yeah, right now, $7,000 an acre foot is the going rate that we've seen, so that's what the offer is to these these shareholders.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
That's good questions.
I think,
Yes.
maybe you mentioned, Stephen, I missed it, you correct me if I mistake this, but our understanding is the way the grant was written is the grant allows, it's a large pot of money, $2.5 million total, and a portion of that is able to be used for the connections and the system improvements, and then a part of it is able to be both the connections and the purchase of the water shares are wrapped together into the grant. They're both approved. So the reason it's done that way is so that depending on not knowing exactly, being able to predict what the demand here is from the individual shareholders, whether they sell or not, that money still doesn't go to waste. So under the ARPA funds, which this is, that has to be committed to a specific project by the end of this year. So my point is, gonna correct me, is if this money, if the whole 700,000 isn't used by the unit owners, we can still take that money under the grant approval and use it in other parts of the system. That money isn't lost to benefit the community. Does that make sense?
Even if it's obligated for this purpose by the end of the year, but then we don't use it, then we could still use it for other things?
Well, it has to be obligated by the end of the year, and so that's part of why we've said November 1st is your
Right.
deadline to make this decision, then we'll know if there's a chunk of money there.
Gotcha.
We're going to go and make sure that it goes back into the system optimization.
So we could
because there-
use the
there
rest
are
of
other-
the, because there are other projects.
There's
that we
other
could
projects
use.
that we want to use the optimization funds for if these don't come to fruition.
And I think my understanding is the obligation, the way you demonstrate that is not just to say, this is the federal government, not just to say, we hope to use it for this, is you've got to have contracts around that they know specifically. 'Cause we had the same discussion internally as how rigid are they in terms of doing that. If we think we're going to have 10 and it ends up being 5, or whatever, and that's the view of, Tracy isn't here, but in his review of that from previous experiences with their own ARPA money, is that you've got to have contracts and those kind of things that back up that commitment. That's what we're trying to encourage people. If you're interested in this, state it, let's get you in, because once that deadline passes, this money isn't going to be available for that. But it's written again in the way that it can be used either or, so the money isn't lost to the benefit of the water system and the residents of Layton.
I think that's a big component on helping somebody decide whether to do this or not, is the fact that this is money that won't be offered again.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think, they would think similarly.
But new things are scary, so.
I think you've done, I mean, I think the offer's fair, and I
Yeah.
think hopefully they take the opportunity to, because it's just gonna cost more.
Yeah.
Sorry. Are other water districts in the state, have they been awarded grants? Or just we?
I mean, there's always grants and things.
For the
going
similar
on,
type
but
grant, similar program, other
There's,
districts?
I believe there's options for them to apply as well. I'm not sure if they've been awarded them or not, but there's been a lot of push to optimize and, water that gets put to use, and the rest needs to go to the Great Salt Lake because it's been a big push of theirs. And so I think this is part of that program, is to say, you're a big city now, let's stop flood irrigating in places that maybe don't make a lot of sense anymore.
Okay, thanks.
So I know we asked this already, but if half of the 40, like 20 are like, yeah, I just don't want to do that, what does that look like in the future? Because does that then mess up the plan that we have?
Not necessarily. Holmes Creek will just have to continue providing their service and their water, and then I think through attrition, people are gonna, we've had quite a few people who have already moved off of this flood system because it's just not convenient, and, if you're 80 years old and you have to get up at 2 a.m. to go turn head gates, I mean, those are some things that some of these people are considering, to be honest, and so, but yeah, it won't mess anything up if they choose not to participate. It just maybe will take them longer to move over and come off of the system. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, let's go ahead and move on. Chad, you're up on the next one, which is amend our municipal code.
Thanks, Mayor. This is an application that was submitted by a resident, not a resident, by a property owner, that they would like to request that the use of tattoo establishment, says tattoo parlor up there, I think that's the old nomenclature of the code, but it's a tattoo establishment. They'd like to extend that use to the professional business zone. Now, before we get into the details, I want to do some history, because this really, the reason that we're here today really goes back 30 years. So 30 years ago, approximately, there was an illegal subdivision that occurred on a property in Layton City. The owner of that property came back subsequently to do some development, planning and zoning. The city zoning officials pointed out that this property was not legally created. It was an illegal parcel, and that they could not do any development here unless they unraveled that illegal parcel split that occurred and made this a legal parcel again. So the property owner at the time said, we don't want to do that. Is there anything else that we could do potentially to make this go forward? In good faith, the city offered up, well, you could change the zoning of this property to professional business. That has a smaller lot size, it could fit in, you could fit some business in there, and it wouldn't require you to go back and undo what's already been done through this illegal process. So they did mention at the time, if you do this, your uses on this property will be restricted. This is a very restrictive zone, it's meant for a whole different context, but we're willing to do this rather than go through this other process. So in good faith, the city did approve that zone change and allowed for that PB zone to be established. Now we fast forward to today, 30 years later, we have a property owner, a new property owner, that has come and purchased this property, and whether, to their knowledge or not to their knowledge, we're not aware that a tattoo establishment was not allowed on the property, and have now come back and asked that the city change the zoning standards for the professional business zone to allow for tattoo establishments on that property. Now, before we get into it, there's a lot of other things we can talk about, but this is the core issue. And staff's, again, recommendation is that this is bad policy for us to change a code because we have a property owner who, unknowingly or knowingly, purchased a property that didn't allow a particular use that they were hoping they could establish in that property. There's a lot of other good reasons to change code standards, but we would recommend that's not one of them. That we should, again, this is not something that's come up in the recent conversations with any other developers. We have 350 plus acres of ground that could allow for a tattoo establishment today. If there was any concern that there was enough land zoned for that use, our recommendation would be it would not be this particular property. Let me explain why. So you can see this is the property that has kind of started this whole conversation. You can see that it's kind of surrounded by some other commercial zones. CH notably is right there. This is not a typical place where you would see a PB zone. PB zones are typically on the edges of single-family residential neighborhoods. So you can see a few other examples of that up and down Hillfield, notably on on Gordon Avenue. You can see some of those other PB zone properties. Again, a lot of times they extend into these single-family neighborhoods. Getting to West Layton, you can see this is on West Gentile. You can see a little finger of professional business sticking up into a residential neighborhood in that location. And then further to the west, again, this is Gentile in the south. Again, this is just to the west of 2700 West, the new extension. We've got a PB zone, and then also up here on 3000 West and Gordon, there's some additional. And you can see one of the defining characteristics of this zone is that it's a transitional zone that provides for some limited commercial use that's neighborhood supporting within these areas. As we've looked at this proposed use, we don't feel that this is a compatible zone district to allow for this type of a use. Now, that being said, there was a lot of discussion in the Planning Commission, if you've read the minutes, about whether or not this was appropriate based on maybe some judgment on the use itself. That's not what staff's position is at all. We're saying based on operational characteristics and the characteristic of the zone itself, which is meant to limit commercial use, that it's not appropriate to, again, expand another commercial use into this property, into these zones, especially where there's, areas where these are just right in the middle of residential neighborhoods. If anything, the discussion should be about further limiting uses in that PB zone rather than expanding to another commercial use. So that's the gist of this. We had a lot of discussion about the use itself, about operational characteristics. We do feel, again, just based on the operational characteristics of the zone and just the nature of the normal location for these zone districts, that this is not an appropriate change to our zoning text. We did recommend to the Planning Commission that this proposal not be approved. The Planning Commission did review this at two separate meetings. They continued after a short discussion at their first meeting to another meeting in September, and the Planning Commission did recommend that the City Council deny this request to change the text of the code to allow for tattoo establishments within the professional business zone. I'm happy to go into other details, but I wanted to get kind of to the heart of the matter there. So are there any other questions I can answer for you?
Just one. instead of trying to change the world, why don't they just try to change what they're doing? I
So,
mean, to change their PB zone to whatever it, I don't know, whatever would be acceptable.
yeah, the CH zones where those were allowed, they could. Originally, that would have been the remedy, right? Back in the day, they could have done it then. They could have gone back and said, well, we're gonna unwind this illegal parcel split, we're gonna get that land back that we split off, and then we're gonna come with a zone that actually, fits all these uses that we want there. They can still do it today. Again, there's two separate property owners, but there's, the surrounding parcel has some parking established there. That's certainly something that you could do, cross access easements, cross parking easements, and establish a lot that could allow them to go back to a CH zone, which is compliant with the general plan.
So is this, this hatch mark right above the PB, is that what was originally a part of that lot to begin
Yeah,
with?
so this area that's zone CH there, you can see that's kind of the panhandle that comes off of there. That was all part of that parcel originally, before that lot split. This is also on the south part of that, was also part of that kind of larger parcel that was split off. Again, once that illegal parcel split occurred, there were some other subsequent parcel splits that occurred for a condominium plot on the lot to the south that were done appropriately in the correct parcel, or correct process. But again, this was, the reason for this request really comes back to something that the city did in good faith to try to fix a problem that had been done, that had been created by the actions of the property owner outside of the permit.
So the new owner, do they know, like how much does the new owner know about what their options are? I mean, I read the minutes, I know they were not at the meeting for the public hearing piece,
They were, so it was
Yeah,
a continued
somebody
hearing.
was there.
They were at the meeting, at the first meeting, they were there. It was continued to a date and time certain, and they were there for that notice. They
Yeah.
did not come to that second meeting for whatever reason. They were there for a public hearing. The public hearing was opened at the first meeting, so they did have a chance to speak, and they did speak at that first meeting. But the answer to your question is, yeah, we've explained all the different options, including, going back and unwinding and trying to purchase adjacent property to make that lot a conforming lot.
Staff's had multiple discussions with this owner well before it ever got into any public meetings on exploring options and suggestions about ways to work around it and so forth. And am I correct in remembering that he doesn't have a specific tenant agreement? It's just as he says, a matter of principle, that he thinks that if somebody owns a piece of property, they should be able to use it as they want. So it's not like he has a tenant or he signed an agreement with somebody, he's trying to honor that. He's just saying, no, I don't know if I'll build a tattoo parlor on there or not, but I want to have the right to be able to do that. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
he has established
So-
relationships with some of these uses that he has established in other places, and he'd like to have that option here, so.
So I was approached by someone, 2023, you and I had a chat about this. I don't know if it's the same person that reached out again, the applicant that reached out for this. I don't know if that was the same person or not.
I don't think so. Yeah.
But my concern with this is the other, so the staff's, what you just said makes sense from the staff's perspective. I think the other, what this applicant's trying to do, and I agree with, I think he's evangelizing some for things are changing, and you've got the salon, the beauty process, that services that can happen in PB zones. I guess they're not conditional, or they are conditional.
They're conditional.
They're conditional, but they're allowed uses, and we've seen from those services extend, no pun intended, into permanent makeup and microblading, which it's a needle, it's ink. Yeah, it doesn't go as deep. Yeah, it's not as permanent. Yeah, I get the process, but it's still ink, needle. It's a tattoo happening in a salon. And so I don't know if that just crept up on us over time and we haven't, because it's not in any of our zoning or the uses. It's just salon and beauty, and that's just part of it. So I think that's the other, and I'm sure the planning commission, their discussions went that way as well, that it's a tattoo, and there's a stigma, I think, in tattoo shops. There's a stigma with people, there's just a stigma attached to it. And I don't know that we've addressed it from a policy point of view of, okay, what's allowed, what's not allowed. And that, I think that deserves some attention also. So maybe not in this one, maybe not this, with what you're talking about, the illegal subdivision and all of that, but just that general policy of, okay, what do we as a city want to do?
I think these are good policy questions.
Hello? Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted just to kind of piggyback on what Councilman Morris was saying. I really am just looking at this as if this was, I don't really care about the specifics of the illegal. I mean, all that's pretty unfortunate for the property owner and the city working in good faith, all of that. I'm treating this as a simple request to add this use into PB generally, whether that is a good public policy decision. And for some of the reasons that Clint mentioned are some of the reasons why I was thinking I could see it at least coming in line with some of the other permanent makeup things that have kind of come about in the last few years, those being allowed in those PB zones and this not being allowed in those PB zones. So, Chad, would you mind just explaining just as a general matter why you think this is, why, you know, the tattoo specifically is not a good use in the TV, whereas the other permanent makeup would be?
So, again, what we would, I guess, explain there is that should we have a desire as a council, as a community, to extend this, a tattoo use out to other zones, we think that's a good conversation. What we would suggest is that the PB zone is meant to be limited in its number of uses. And I think from our perspective, if we're concerned about, you know, the differences, I think, I would say there are differences. I would say those differences are significant. That's a policy question. I would say that, you know, this part of this process is to go through and have a discussion about policy and whether or not that's, you know, the council certainly has the obligation and the right to set policy issues. But from staff's perspective, there are enough differences between someone, you know, giving permanent makeup to establishing a tattoo use in these PB zones. So we would say there's a difference. However, because of the nature of the type of uses that we're talking about for a PB zone, if we start to get into a discussion of, well, you know, is this similar then to another use, our suggestion would be maybe we pull the other use out, because this is really supposed to be a limited neighborhood zone where we don't lightly add additional uses, because we're really trying to focus on what's appropriate for that neighborhood, what are the impacts to that neighborhood, operational hours, you know, just operational characteristics, parking, all those things that go along with it. This is something that requires health department permits. We feel that it is a difference between this and a permanent makeup type of a use. Now, I think it's a good discussion to have that discussion as a council, but we don't feel like this is the right forum to do this. This is specifically saying if we change this, we change it for every PB zone property in the city. And our recommendation is there are many of these that maybe aren't even appropriate for some of those other more intense traffic generating uses. I think what I would say, one more thing real quick, sorry Clint, is that I think the initial thought of you know, a hairdresser in these PB zones is that we'd have a small operation where someone would come in and maybe have one chair, two chairs, and they serve that neighborhood's use. What we're seeing in this particular instance is a large structure that was originally intended as a medical office that's being converted into smaller, almost kiosk type uses where we have individual renters. It becomes a large traffic generating use, and we want to make sure that we're not expanding these uses inappropriately. Thanks.
Well, at least we know we're working the other
Yeah,
meeting.
no,
Okay.
I guess my thought would be, we had that, the concrete crusher business that went through the planning commission.
Yeah.
And as a conditional use, and it was hours of operation, and you have to put the concrete crusher so far, the setback has to be so much, and the lighting has to be this, and the sprinkling system has to be so high to mitigate dust, and we put all sorts of mitigation on the condition of being able to do that on that property. Couldn't something similar happen with, if tattoo services in PB, if we're gonna allow permanent makeup as well, couldn't it be conditioned to, it's, you come and you apply and yeah, if you wanna do it, here's how you can do it, instead of, it's not allowed. Or is that?
We could, but that's not the request, right? That's one thing I wanna make sure that we're laser focused on.
I get it.
That is not the request. The request is, we just allow these in our PV zone.
So I think this applicant
I
has,
guess-
it's the property, obviously, but also I think he's looking at us going, you guys are just, like, things are changing and you're missing an opportunity here in the city, as far as business goes.
And
with
our
how
argument
things
is
are changing.
we have hundreds of acres
Yeah,
of
I-
opportunity,
yeah,
so, yeah, and even others that could make some sense.
So did we make a mistake in allowing permanent makeup and microblading in PV?
I think that's
Again,
a-
do we just creep
That's a
up on
good,
us?
that's a good question. I think that's a good policy question. I think, again, interpreting the code, we have looked at that as something different as far as use goes. Different equipment, different process. You know, they certainly both use a needle, but they are different. And there are significant differences between that, including, as you mentioned, they don't last as long, you have to come back and for reapplication. So we do see some differences there, and that's a policy discussion. But again, it's not that policy discussion for tonight, though. That's not what he's asking. He's asking for tattoos to be allowed in the PV zone.
And I guess just one more thought on that. I understand that maybe the procedure or the process by which this got to the council is maybe not what you would have wanted, Chad. I can understand that, and not my favorite process either. I guess I'm just curious why it seems to be like there's this argument that it's some sort of, broad, focused change. Yes, it's broad focus from the PV, but it's still just one use. We're just asking about one use in the whole PV zone. We're not asking to do anything else other than that. It seems to me it's pretty surgical in that way. Am I wrong? Am I reading it wrong?
But it applies to every single property in the PV. And our recommendation to you is that because of the locational factors of these properties, this is not an appropriate use for that to go to every single property that's zone PV in the city right now.
Do we have a lot of PV zones?
I showed you most of them there, yeah, that's
Right, but
about
that's what I'm
80
saying,
acres
that's
total.
not, to me, that does not,
So
it's
to give
not
you,
a
to put it in
lot.
perspective, kitty corner from my house, the home on the corner is the PV that they pointed out.
Yeah, that's,
But that's-
It's zoned that right now, but they haven't done anything with it.
but they could, yeah.
But they could, yeah.
If this was approved, they could apply for a use permit tomorrow, right? And that's.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other things that are acceptable in a PV zone.
There are, yeah.
but not a
Okay.
lot, because it says limited, they're
Well,
limited.
it's
uses,
limited, but what I'm saying is, and 30 years ago, I think they thought this, that we're limiting this for a reason. Okay, because most of the structure seemed to be around residential, most of it. And that probably was too, maybe at one time, and it's changed over the years, because of Main Street and all kinds of things. I don't like the idea of carte blanche. But because tattooing has changed a lot, I could see it being, I don't remember the word you used, but where you look at it individually, where this isn't anywhere near a residential area. And I understand that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at if we say yes, it's yes everywhere. And that bothers me. Okay, but if the person was to come back in and say, well then, can we play this game, do this, do that, do this, and maybe get to approve then, I might look at it differently. So, but as far as saying yay, and then you can do it anywhere, no, I don't agree with that at all.
Do
Sorry.
you guys want to continue this out there? Because I mean, it is obviously on our agenda.
It's on the agenda.
Yeah. Because, no, it's already 7:01.
No.
I would
Are you
like
guys
to.
good with
I
that?
have more questions that I can ask out there.
Okay.
You're gonna have to at 7:01.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look for a motion to adjourn our work meeting and go to our regularly scheduled council meeting.
So moved.
Second?
So moved. What? I love it. Second.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go ahead. I'd like to go ahead and welcome everyone out to our Layton City Council meeting this evening for October 17th. Our start time is 7:05, and we appreciate the patience of those in the audience attending. As customary, we do like to start our meetings with the pledge and the prayer, or the prayer and the pledge, however we choose to. But each month we allow one of our council members to be in charge, and this month it is Council Member Bettina Smith Edmondson. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over for her.
Thank you, Mayor. I am honored to have this opportunity. This is our last meeting prior to your elections. And on tonight, I am going to offer prayer, and then I'm going to ask for Mr. Claude Young to come up, and he will help us to recite the pledge. He is a veteran. He is a member of our city who comes to the council meetings and voices his opinion, and we love it. And he is also the precinct chair for LA 34. And so I'm honored to allow him to come up and lead us in the pledge, just as one of those fun things that he gets to do as a citizen of Layton. So if you'll bow your heads with me, I will do the prayer, and then Mr. Young will lead us in the pledge. God, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for another opportunity to come before you and to work with the residents of our city and the council to do the business of Layton. God, we thank you for our first responders. We thank you for our schools. We thank you for just everyone who works on behalf of the city to help us have the life that you've allowed us to have. We ask that you would lead us and guide us on tonight in the decisions that we will make. We ask that you give us clarity of mind, help us to understand everything that's presented, and to make decisions that are in the best interest of the residents of this city. We thank you in advance for your guidance, and we ask that you be with us throughout the entirety of this meeting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Mr. Young, if you would come, and I'll ask you all to stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. I love it when we have citizens participate in our program here. Before I actually get the meeting started, I also want to acknowledge that we do have Council Member Zach Bloxham online. And I know Council Member Tyson Robert was on, but he's not on at the moment. So anyway, with that, I'm going to turn the time over for any municipal announcements at this time. And I know somebody's going to be filling in.
The city has a Halloween bash, which is tomorrow night. According to the weather, we don't know what's going to happen. So it has the opportunity to go on as planned over by the museum at 4 o'clock, or is it 5 to 7?
5 to 8.
5 to 8. Or if it is bad weather, then it'll be at Central Davis Junior High in the gymnasium. So it's going to go on no matter what. And they wanted everyone to know that. So don't think that if it's raining, it's not going to happen. It's still going to happen. It'll just happen over at Central. So the best thing to do is drive by here. If you see a lot of people, stop. If not, keep going to Central.
Okay. It's fun for the kids, and we encourage them to dress up and enjoy all the games and activities.
We went to, did it last year over here by the museum, and I was amazed how many people. I mean, there's also a special attraction, a train that pulls them around, and the train had to stay an extra hour to get all the people that had bought tickets. So it was a very good, fun thing to do.
Yeah, a lot of great costumes, even by adults. Okay. Any other announcements?
I think we have one other event happening on Saturday. Whispers in the Dark?
Yes.
Okay. The Layton's Haunted Storytelling Night. And so that will be happening on October 19th from 3 to 9. There will also be an open air market, vendors, live music, food trucks, and storytelling. And that'll be right out here as well. Right?
Yeah. So the Saturday night opportunity is very similar to our Friday Night Fest, but it will have spooky stories in that night. So, and it's put on with the museum, Davis Arts Council, Layton City Parks and Rec, and all the vendors. So anyway, kind of a fun deal. 2 nights in a row to be able to celebrate a fun holiday, along with everything else that's going on in the city. I know that there's a lot of different trunk or treats or festivities, so it's just a fun time to kind of get out and enjoy the last minute of our fall weather. Okay, if there's no other citizen or any other municipal events to be announced, I want to go ahead and go on then down to item number 3. We do not have any verbal petitions or anything, so I'll move on to our citizens comment portion of our meeting. This part of our meeting is an opportunity for citizens to address this governing body. If you're speaking on an item that is not part of the public hearing, you're welcome to stand up, come to the mic, state your name for the record. You do not have to give your address, but we would like to know at least what city you're from. And then At the same time, it doesn't have to pertain just to items on the agenda. If you have anything at all you feel like you need to bring before us, please do so. Just understand that we will not engage in any type of dialogue. So if you have questions, then we'll be happy to get back with you. So with that, I'll now turn the time over to our citizens for comments.
Hi, I forgot you guys took public comment. I so appreciate that. Jennifer Garner, I live here in Layton. I understand that they're looking at cold blue shelters, but I wanted to maybe provide some information. So the Biden administration has allowed schools to use the McKinney-Vento Act to count homeless students. In the McKinney-Vento Act, they are including students who live with grandma, if mom lives there too. So anybody else. So if I moved back home with my mom and took my kids with me, my 3 kids would be listed in the school system as homeless. So I have a teacher friend, and she said, I have 5 students in my class that are considered homeless, but they live in bigger houses than me because they live with grandma up on the hill. So I just hope that when you hear, this is how many homeless people we have, that you will ask the question, can you give me the details on how many people live with grandma in a giant big house? Also, the McKinney-Vento Act counts kids who live in trailer parks. That McKinney-Vento Act, I believe, is discriminatory because some of our most affordable housing is in those trailer parks, and they are counting every kid who lives in that trailer park as in unstable housing and therefore qualifies as homeless. So that is where the Davis School District is getting, oh, we have 2,600 homeless kids. Well, are they housed or are they homeless? Because no kid deserves to be homeless. But if they're living with grandma or in the most affordable because their parents are wise and in what they can afford, then that's setting everybody's hair on fire over something that's not the whole picture, if that makes sense. But I believe that Utah is giving, and if we keep throwing more money at things that aren't the real issue, then we're ignoring the real issue. So I hope that you'll ask more questions when people bring forth data, because that is totally a legal way to define them. But if you'll ask for that specific data, I would super duper appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay, is there anyone else?
My name is Kelly Wright, and I am a Layton resident. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council tonight. I have a handout for the council members and perhaps for our city manager, Mr. Jensen. And then with the missing council members, there should be even a couple left over here. My topic tonight is your consent item B on tonight's agenda, the new pipeline in Layton. I understand, living in Utah all my life, about the need for good water management and resources, how precious it is. But I want to suggest a change to the final leg of the pipeline, where it leaves 575 north. You'll see this on a map later when you get to item B, and they're the consent items, and crosses between 2 adjacent residential lots, then goes down into Adams Reservoir. I offer 2 reasons for making a suggestion to change. Well, first let me say that the actual suggestion is that the route of that last leg of the pipeline be moved 2 lots more west. And my 2 reasons for making the suggestion are, and you can see it in the map I've given you, the red is the present location that's in your packet for tonight's meeting. Goes between lots 71 and 72. The proposal I'm suggesting is that it be moved 200 feet or 2 lots worth to the west and go between lot 46 and lot 70. My first reason for that suggestion is that in between the red shaded area, lots 71 and 72, there is no existing utility easement. I verified that with Davis County today. And I also verified with the Davis County recorder that between lots 46 and lot 70, there is an existing utility easement of 10 feet wide on each of those two lots, making a total of 20-foot wide easement between those two lots. We'll access the reservoir just fine. So it's a utility easement question that I'm bringing up as my first reason. My second reason for making this suggestion is that you can see I've illustrated a dock there on the shape of a T. That dock will only be about 40 feet from the exit of the pipeline if it goes in its existing location. If this suggestion is taken and is moved 2 lots westward where there is already a utility easement, then that exit of the pipeline will be approximately 240 feet from that dock. Okay, so that's my suggestion and the reasons for it, and I thank you for your time and for your attention, and I want to know if there's any questions.
Like I said, we don't usually engage in any dialogue, but certainly when we get to that topic on the consent item, if the council has any questions, they'll ask our staff for it at that time.
I will still be here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that wish to address us at this time under citizens' comment? Like I said, if you're here for the public hearing, we'll make sure that you have an opportunity to speak on that item as well. Okay, seeing that there's none, let's go ahead and move our meeting along then. We'll go ahead and move into our consent items tonight. We have 3 of them that will be presented. These 3 items, once they are presented, the action will come back to the council and they can actually act upon all 3 items in one motion and vote. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Steve Jackson to talk about our first item, which is a bid award between DBA and CL Water Solutions.
Mayor, Council, it's good to be with you tonight. Before you for your consideration is Resolution 24-28. The resolution is for a contract with CNL Water Solutions for our various sanitary sewer repairs project, project number 21 or 24-41. The resolution authorizes the execution of the agreement with CNL Water Solutions for 6 different schedules for the repair of various sanitary sewer issues that are within the city, including reconnection of laterals, manholes, and other replacement of pipes. So you can see Ann Street, Maryland Drive, Canyon View at Case Creek Trail, the Adamswood Road, 2350 East, and then 1575 East are all the areas that we have these proposed projects in. We did receive 3 bids for this project. The CNL Water Solutions submitted the lowest responsible bid in the amount of $366,098. The engineer's estimate was $306,000. Staff would recommend that the council adopt Resolution 24-28, awarding the bid to in situ form doing business as CNL Water Solutions. Authorize the mayor or the city manager, to execute the agreement for the various sanitary sewer repairs project 24-41. Are there any questions that I can answer on this project?
Council?
A quick question.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mayor. So if we approve this, what's the schedule? Before winter? Or?
No. We have given them quite a long window, so it would be sometime throughout the next year that they can complete this project. However, when they come to a repair location, they have to finish that repair before they can disappear and do something else. So it is filler work for them, but we feel like it's a good project for them to be able to work on as they get time.
And are there, for sewer,
I mean, can they work in the wintertime or depending on what the project is?
Depending on what the project is, they can. And so we think there might be some that they do in the winter, but there are also some that might need to wait till spring. The Canyon View Drive one, for example, is on a hillside, and so we'll probably not want to do that one unless there's some really decent weather to be in there taking care of that. So.
Do any of these projects require a bypass, or is it all just?
We don't anticipate there needing to be a bypass, but there is some additional costs that are included in our project so that if we do need the bypass, we can have that taken care of as we move forward.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just more. The Canyon View one?
Yeah.
Is that to shore up that pipeline there, or is it something else?
That pipeline has some issues that we're concerned with. We want to make sure that line doesn't shift or move, and so we need to fix that.
Are these schedules in order of prioritization, or are they just listed?
Not necessarily. There are some of these that we're fixing some of the issues so that we can then put a slip line down the pipe as well. So there are some that we're going to coordinate with the contractor that does the slip lining to make sure that they're done before our other project. But there's not necessarily a prioritization where we're going to start at A and go through the rest, but more of what the contractor's availability is.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, very good. We appreciate that. I know you have the next item, so if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and stay up there and discuss item B.
Perfect. So item B is an interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Weaver Basin Water Conservancy District, resolution 24-29. The resolution authorizes the execution of this interlocal agreement. The purpose for the interlocal agreement is that Weaver Basin received funding from the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity in the amount of $2.5 million to optimize water conveyance and eliminate the loss of water in the system in the area of Layton, particularly the Home Creek service area where they have flood irrigation. So the award or the grant was awarded to Weaver Basin. Weaver Basin approached the city about partnering on projects to increase and optimize the service for the water in the area. And so the projects that are identified in this grant is first the one that was spoken about in the public comment period here. It's a water line that would finish connecting Holmes Reservoir to Andy Adams Reservoir, Gentile Street through the subdivision there, and then as was mentioned, we do show that line conceptually is proposed to go through those two lots. I want to remind the council that you're not approving that alignment. That will come at a different date when we bring that project back to you. But we certainly will talk about that comment and look into that as we move forward. So that project is proposed to be $1.2 million of the grant, and then part of the grant would be to complete this project by the end of 2026 so that we can utilize all of those funds. The second part of the project is that there are several properties within Layton City who still irrigate with flood irrigation water off of the Holmes Creek system. The optimization here is that some of these smaller properties probably would be more efficiently watered through our culinary water system in the area. You can see the properties in blue are all the eligible parcels that were considered for this grant. All of the gray area is watered through our culinary water system. So approximately 40 properties that could be switched over from the flood irrigation to the pressurized culinary system. The grant funding there will allow for the city to purchase the water rights, or the water shares from Holmes Creek Irrigation shareholders that are being used on those properties. Also pay them to install a pressurized sprinkler system on the culinary system, and then give them a 10-year price differential for the difference in cost between their current shareholder price and the cost to be on the secondary system for Layton City. If the property owner or shareholders, property owners agree to that, they would become customers of Layton City's culinary system. it would become a more efficient way to water these properties from the grant standpoint. And so that's where that funding is coming from. The approximate cost of that would be $765,000 if all of the property owners accepted the offer that is being extended to them. So the grant does require that the funds be obligated by the end of 2024, and then all of the funds be actually spent by the end of 2026. So we're hoping to be able to move forward with this. If the council approves this resolution, it will go before the Weber Basin Board at the end of this month as well to approve, and then all of the contracts will be in place by the end of 2024 in order to move this project forward. Staff recommends the council adopt resolution 2429, authorizing the mayor to execute the interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Weber Basin Water Conservancy District for water resources conservation project reimbursement. Are there any questions I can answer?
Council, do you have questions? Go ahead.
I don't really have a question, but just wanted to bring up something that we talked about in the work meeting. There are a number of homes here. You identified approximately 40. And I know Councilmember Roberts is not able to be on the call, but he did have a question about the cost of the shares that these residents currently have, and wanted to just make sure that residents who did choose to move into this agreement would be made whole. And so I appreciate your iteration on the 10 years of that kind of cost deferment, allowing residents who do choose to use this, where they would still be paying what they've been normally paying for a matter of 10 years, and then us being able to kind of take care of the additional costs there, as well as paying for installation of sprinkler systems. Anything additionally that they would have to incur on their own would be able to be covered by this grant. And so that was just something I wanted to make sure was out. I don't think we spoke about it in detail in this meeting, but we did have a pretty robust discussion in the work meeting about that, and that any resident who chose to participate in this would be made whole in that financial way. So thank you for that information that you gave us prior.
Thank you.
Good point.
Madam Mayor, it's Councilman Bloxham.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Councilman Bloxham.
Steve, I just wanted to say thank you for speaking to the comment that the gentleman made. He took time out of his busy schedule to come in and make a comment, and I just appreciated you recognizing it and addressing it and letting him know that will be something that will come up to us in the future. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Morris.
Thanks, Mayor. Steve, you said water rights, and then you quickly said water shares.
Yeah.
Can you give a quick primer on the difference of those two?
Yeah, so the water rights are the water rights that are issued by the state of Utah. All the water in the state of Utah is considered, the property of the state, and then your right to use that water is based on the water rights that are issued by the state of Utah. The water shares are actual shares in the company who hold the rights. So Holmes Creek Irrigation holds the underlying water right, but the shareholders have the shares that give them the right to use that water from the company. And so the difference is we're not purchasing the right itself, we're purchasing the shares that allow that water to be used on the ground. Yeah.
And most of these homeowners probably have maybe a half a share or one share at the most? Or do
Most
you have
of them
an
are
idea?
about one share.
One share.
It depends on the size of the parcel. The limitation was anything under 2 acres of ground was how they were considered to be eligible for this grant.
Okay, so at this point in time, then you've notified these homeowners regarding their water shares, but anybody that would be impacted on the placement of the pipe and that, when we get to that point, then you'll notify them, or how would these folks know what's going on?
We have reached out to the one property owner that we were exploring putting the pipeline through. The rest of that pipeline project would be a project notification as we move forward.
Okay.
So.
Alrighty. Okay. Council, do you have any other questions on this? I mean, you already spoke to the timing of the project. that it needs to be completed by the end of 2026, correct? Yeah. Okay.
All right.
There's no further questions on that. Then let's go ahead and move on to item number C, which is a plat amendment with Harris Point subdivision. And Mr. Chad Wilkinson's going to speak to this item.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Yes, as was mentioned, this is a plat amendment, subdivision plat amendment for the Harris Point commercial subdivision. By way of context, it's just right there at that little red dot is the just north of Antelope, just approximately 700 west. Here's the subdivision that's outlined in red. You can see that this is an existing commercial area. We've got some existing commercial zones there. BRP, which is our business research park, to the east. The property that we're talking about really is just this parcel that's outlined in red. This subdivision originally included some additional property that I'm kind of outlining now to the south and to the north. But we're just talking about this lot 101, current lot 101. So that's what it looks like. These buildings are important. I'm going to just point out the 3 buildings you can see within that parcel and tell you why that's important here in just a second. The purpose of this subdivision is to create parcels that would put one of these buildings on each of those new lots. So you can see the new lots that are proposed, 1, 2, 3, 4 new lots. Each of those lots on the west side would have a building on it. Then this would be a vacant, undeveloped parcel to the east. This is the previous subdivision. You can see, or excuse me, the existing subdivision. You can see that existing 1 lot that exists there with the red outline around it. Again, this was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their last meeting, and the Planning Commission has recommended that the council approve this subdivision amendment, creating these 4 lots for the Harris Point subdivision. And I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Council?
Quick question. Thanks, Mayor. Just reasons you'd subdivide? Generally?
What's that?
Generally?
Reasons to subdivide generally?
Generally. I mean, it's just all one, it's owned by one property owner.
You could potentially sell off each of these lots separately with those buildings on them. Yeah. The applicant's here if you had a question specifically for him about the reasons, but that, generally speaking, that would be a reason why you do it. So you could sell off individual buildings. You can see one thing to note, the Cane's restaurant does take its access from these properties. Those easements will stay intact. Those remain just across the property as shown.
So this is the undeveloped area?
I'll go back to that picture.
Because I was going to say, is it the new crispy cone and all that part of this?
That's right. So this will be on its own lot, this building where crispy cone is.
Yeah.
The David's Bridal, which has got a Halloween store in it now. And then, I always forget the name, Zhao's. Asian food
Asian.
right there. So that there will be still a vacant or undeveloped parcel to the east.
Okay, so there can be development there.
Sure.
Got it. Okay. Any questions, council?
Perhaps semi-unrelated. There is, for that Cane's property, we spoke about this before, there's a marquee, is that what you call them? The signs on the outside. If this is divided up and those individual lots are then sold, would that sign that is currently on the outside of the Cane's property that also has the signage for Zhao, would that sign be owned by the one owner who has the Cane's lot at that point? Or would that sign go, where would that sign go, I guess? Who would be the owner of that?
Yeah, the property ownership would still be the Cane's property, but that sign was approved as a project. I'm trying to think the exact name of that. It just left me. We just went through this process. Garrett's here. Yeah, come on. It's essentially a project sign for all those parcels, so it doesn't change the ability for those people to put signage on there. It applies to everything within the red and the Cane's property. They can have that signage. I'm forgetting the exact name in the code right now. It's just left me. But plan development sign. Thank you. That's exactly right. Yes, okay. Plan development sign is what it was approved by the Planning Commission, and they can continue to keep that sign the way that it is. It'll operate just exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
To answer the question before, another reason for subdividing it is right now it's all encumbered under one loan, and it gives us the variance to do that. When you have a vacant building like David's Bridal come up, loan covenants that you have to hit, this gives us the ability to possibly pay off one, sell it, and then encumber it with different loans as well. So it gives a little flexibility. Thank you, Council.
Mm-hmm. Smart.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, council, I'll bring the consent items back for action. So whoever would like to make this motion again, please state the resolution, or in the case of item C, please state the reason for it. You could add that to it. You could add that to the resolution.
I don't know if it's time yet, right? Maybe we
Ask
ask.
him to include that.
Can I ask one other question before I make a motion? Specific to item B, Steve, you mentioned that the alignment that Mr. Wright spoke of is something that would come up at a later date. Is that something that is always up for discussion, or is that something that would need to be brought up specifically to discuss later?
In other words,
Well,
do we need to make that part of the motion or not?
I don't believe so. This is an agreement that just says this is the project that's going to be funded, and then the alignment will come back to you as a bid award or a project thing. So there will be more discussion with the council as to where that needs to go. We would have to acquire the property or the easement if we decide that that's the proper place to put this pipeline. So that would need to come back to the council anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Madam Mayor, so I move that we approve the consent items as listed. Item A, the bid award project 24-41 and resolution 24-28. Item B, the interlocal cooperation agreement, resolution 24-29, and the plat amendment for the Harris Point subdivision.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt the consent items as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. There you have it. It's any nays? I mean, I didn't hear it. I heard all of them. So anyway, there you have it. The consent items have passed unanimously. So thank you everyone for those presentations and comments. We'll now move on to item number 6, which is a public hearing. But before we open up the public hearing at this time, we will have the information presented to the council by, once again, Mr. Chad Wilkinson, and this is regarding a proposed amendment to the municipal code.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. One moment, I inadvertently closed that screen, and I shouldn't have. Let me put my password in really quick. So as was mentioned, this is an amendment or a proposed amendment to the municipal code, to the text of the municipal code. This particular proposal was brought forward by a property owner here in Layton City. This is an amendment that would allow for tattoo establishments to be located within our PB zone. We had an opportunity in the previous meeting, in our work meeting, to talk a little bit about the history of this property. I want to just go through that very briefly. I'm not going to go in the same detail as what we did in the previous meeting, but for the benefit of the audience that wasn't a part of that meeting. Again, this property was created about 30 years ago. It was through an unauthorized subdivision process. Was found subsequent to that time as the current property owner came in for a development application that the city identified that this parcel did not meet our city standards and was in fact created outside of those city processes. So it was an unauthorized lot. They brought that forward to the applicant and said that further development of the property would not be possible until that particular problem was resolved. So as they talked about solutions, one solution was to unravel or unwind that property sale that had occurred, that unauthorized illegal parcel split that had occurred, and put that property back together with the property that it came from, and do a proper amendment and a proper sale and proper division of that property. The applicant was asking if there were other options available, and one of the options was to rezone the property to PB, and that's what occurred. The city in good faith said we'll go ahead and rezone this property to PB, and that's kind of what brings us to with the stipulation that the uses would be reduced that were allowed for that property. And that kind of gets us to where we are today. We've got a property that just doesn't. It's not necessarily a property that fits where it is. It was a property that was given a zoning designation to try to fix a problem that occurred because of an unauthorized lot split. And so what we're looking at today is a request to change the zone to allow a use that just has never really been anticipated in that particular zoning district. I want to go through, we didn't go through a lot, the staff report in the previous meeting, but I want to just talk about just a few things related to your staff report that was included in your packet. And that is, looking at these three factors. One is, what's the purpose of adding land use to a proposed zone? Anytime we look at a zone change or a text amendment, what's the purpose of adding that land use to the zone? Is the proposed land use compatible with the proposed zone? And does adding the proposed land use advance good policy, and is it consistent with the general plan? So I think we pointed out a few things related to the PB zone. This really is a zone that is typically found surrounded by residential zoning. And I've got on the map here a few examples of where we've got existing PB zones. This is the property of the applicant that's brought this amendment forward. You can see this is atypical. It's not typical that a PB zone be completely surrounded by commercial zoning like this one. More typical is what we see here on Gordon Avenue, where we've got a PB zone that goes quite a ways sometimes into these residential zones, surrounded by existing single-family residential. And it's really to give an opportunity for very limited uses, commercial uses, that are neighborhood serving, that serve that surrounding neighborhood, that give them an opportunity to get services such as accounting services or maybe a small medical office, small dental office, things that are neighborhood serving. So again, these are some examples of that particular zoning district and where they're located. One of the things, again, the question is, what's the purpose of adding that land use? We talked a little bit about that this would allow for that tattoo use in this zone. In all those properties, everything that's zone PB could potentially have that zoning or potentially have that use. And it really is to accommodate this request from this individual property owner. I think as we look at that, as a broad question is there a need to add this use? Staff's recommendation is that we have really, even compared to other surrounding communities, hundreds of acres that are already zoned that would allow for a tattoo use. That's a place where that use could go in without any kind of special zone change or any kind of approval other than what's required in our code for that use. So our recommendation is that there is really not a need to expand this. We haven't had a huge demand for this expansion of tattoo uses in other zones. And if there were, our recommendation would be that this would not be the first zone that we look at. We'd want to look at other zones that this might be a more appropriate. Now, I'm going to talk about that I want to make sure that when I'm using the word appropriate, we're talking about a land use question here. This is not a judgment call on the type of use. And I'm going to explain that in just a little bit, just a moment. Hopefully that'll help the council to understand staff's recommendation. So again, looking at the operational characteristics, we just don't feel like this is a compatible use with that particular zone district. And that kind of answers that second question. One of the reasons why it is pointed out in the staff report is that the PB zone is severely restricted. There are about 51 uses that are allowed in the PB zone, and our regular commercial zones allow, on average, more than twice that. 107 uses typically for these CP1, CP2, CP3 uses, CH. CH is our broadest commercial zone, allows the most uses. It's a very appropriate zone. It's along major streets, allows for good access, has streets that are already built for capacity of traffic and carrying traffic. So again, it's very, very compatible use or compatible zone with a wide variety of uses. So that kind of speaks to number two. Number three, I think, again, when we look at what is this really consistent with the general plan? This is where I want to talk a little bit about our existing PB zones. So again, if this change was to be approved by the council, it would allow tattoo establishments in all PB zones, regardless of what the location is. You can see this is one on West Gentile Street, just north of Gentile, another one further to the west. I actually want to talk about what property we didn't talk about too much in our meeting, though, and this is a property on Layton Parkway, Angel, out to the west. This is a property that those of you that were here during the zone change process will remember. It was a very, very controversial zone change. And this was not talking about the current use. This was talking about just the uses, the limited uses that are allowed in the PB zone. And very, very good discussion from neighborhoods about the impacts of any PB zone in this property. I think that's one thing that staff wants to be very clear about, is that in our recommendation, what we really should be talking about is maybe, if there's a desire to change the PB zone, which is not the question before you tonight. This is a very focused question on whether or not tattoos should be here. But if there's a broader discussion about what uses are appropriate in the PB zone, we feel like that should be that broader discussion. This is an area that those of you that were in the commission or the council remember there was some significant concerns from neighboring property owners about the uses that are already allowed in that PB zone. And our recommendation is that maybe we do have an intensity of land use in those PB zones that are not as compatible with those residential zones, and maybe it's appropriate to look at pulling some of those back rather than adding a new use. And that's really what it comes down to. There are a number of uses. It's not this particular use per se, although we do have concerns about the operational characteristics of this and compatibility with PB. There are a number of uses allowed in the CH, CP3, CP1 zones that we wouldn't feel were compatible in this zone either. Again, the idea is that we're trying to limit the uses in this PB zone, not expand them. So our concern again is that general idea of expansion of uses into in this zone, we don't, because of those operational characteristics, we don't feel that adding this particular use into this zone is appropriate, and that we should follow the Planning Commission's recommendation that this request be denied. That being said, if the council directs us to come back and have a broader policy discussion about appropriate uses in PB zones and various distinguishing characteristics of uses and whether or not they should be allowed in this particular zone, we think that's great, and we would be happy to do that. But again, this very focused question of whether or not tattoo establishments should be allowed in the PB zone, our recommendation is that the council deny this request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, council, do you have any questions before we open it up?
Yeah, just to maybe, thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned, maybe not. I agree that it's not exactly what we're talking about tonight, but it's still related in the fact that the applicant was combining back to the procedure of needles, ink, tattoo for permanent makeup, and microblading. And so I think there is a broader policy discussion to be had. And what we didn't talk about, and I think it was in the notes, in the minutes of the Planning Commission, was if you had in this zone or whatever PB zone, if you had someone come in and say, hey, we just want to do microblading and permanent makeup. And that's not in any of our lists of uses, or that we should have a discussion about that. And then if we did do that, since it's allowed as an extension of hair salons and beauty, I think that'd be an issue. And I may just maybe leading along here, you can stop me, the attorney, but leading the witness, but sorry, Zach, wherever you are, but that a natural extension could also be from microblading and permanent makeup into designer tattoos. Like it just seems like, and I mentioned it earlier, that this crept up on us, that allowing this to already happen. And so now we send a mixed signal, at least to mixed message to at least this property owner that, hey, wait a minute. And we can agree, I guess, and I think this is where we disagree, is on the exact process of how deep the needles are and how permanent the ink is. But it's still a tattoo. And so yes, that's not exactly what we're talking about tonight or voting on tonight, possibly, but it is related.
Well, we appreciate that. And from staff's point of view, our recommendation is they are different. They're different uses. There's different procedures. There's different equipment used. These are different uses. Though the permanent makeup are usually associated with the ones we've seen anyway, or almost always are associated with a beautician type use, a beauty shop type use. It is something that's very limited in its scope. Even the areas of the body that those types of applications occur on are limited compared to a tattoo shop. So we do feel that they are different. And again, reasonable people, this is a reasonably debatable standard. And our recommendation to you is that these are two different applications of maybe something that's similar in some ways. But again, our recommendation is, if that's a discussion that the council would like to have from a policy standpoint, that we would recommend that we pull back uses from our PB rather than adding new ones. This is a zone that needs to be, again, very limited in the type of uses that we have, and perhaps that's something that we need to even pull back further rather than adding another use into this zone.
So just one other thought then, and then I'll I think Bettina has a question or two. We're not regulating the microblading or the permanent makeup. That's from the health department. Davis County does that, but we don't know if a beauty shop is doing that or not.
We do. They typically will tell us that they're doing permanent makeup as part of their application. We have approved some of those applications with permanent makeup for a beauty shop, certainly.
So they are. That's a question that we ask, or is that they just give that up?
Usually they include it in their application because there is a health department requirement for a separate application. So that's typical. We don't usually ask just as a matter of course. Are you also doing permanent makeup? It's just something that's usually volunteered.
And Davis County Health Department, all of this is, and we've chatted about this before, all of this is encompassed in body art. So whether it's tattoos, piercings, microblading, permanent makeup, that's all under one section as far as the health department's concerned.
As far as we know, they
look at them different.
Yeah, they have one permitting process for that, but again, they're not looking at it from a land use standpoint. They're looking at it from looking at health related standards. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So along those similar lines, I think we do need to have a discussion about the zone in general. I have a couple of questions. You alluded a little bit to the fact that you do sometimes know if a salon is doing these types of cosmetic procedures, such as the permanent tattooing for, eyebrows or whatever it may be. Do you know if we have any of, what about folks who have a salon in their home? Do they have to apply to get this same type of zone to do a salon in their home? And if so, do they then have to disclose if they are doing these types of procedures that are not just hair, nails?
Yeah, we have home occupation, barbers, beauticians, and I know of at least one that does include permanent makeup as part of their services.
Okay, and so that's a different zoning because they are doing that inside of their home.
It's residential use. There are guardrails as far as home occupation standards on those numbers of people that can come per day, the numbers of people that can work there, those types of things, parking.
And so what I understand is that these PB zones, because they are bordering residential areas, that the concern largely is due to things that you just mentioned, like traffic, the types of things that are going to be done because they're in or near residential areas. And so I guess, again, it's the same kind of question that Councilmember Morris brought up, where you may have someone who is doing this already in a particular location that is similar to what we are identifying the PB should be because they're in an area that borders residential. I guess the concern is really that there is not so much a clarity there when it comes to this specific use, especially with the way the county looks at it versus the way the city is looking at it for land use, and just understanding as a resident what is okay, what is not okay. And so I think we have a duty to have some clarity around that for residents, something that is easy to understand. Specifically, we don't mention anything about cosmetic artistry, tattooing, microblading in our zoning language currently, because that's something that 30 years ago wasn't really a thing, right? It may have been, but we didn't really know about it. And so even though it's not something that is up for vote tonight, I think it is somewhat difficult to look at those the way that you would like us to look at them and make a determination without thinking about the potential use and others who might want to do something similar. And so I would prefer that maybe we look at this, like we maybe step back and look at the zone, look at what the intention is of whatever the zone is, and really look at these uses. to try and come up with something that's going to be clear, because there are 3 instances that we've just mentioned within this 5 minutes that all are very similar, but have nuanced differences that I think would be hard to explain to the average resident. They're hard for me to explain, and I've read the packet.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate it. I think that broader policy discussion is something that could be had. It's not part of this particular application. I think it's important to, if the council so desires, for us to come back and have this discussion. I will say that while I definitely understand the concern and that there may be for some people, a hard time seeing a difference. There hasn't been, from staff's point of view. We have very clearly defined that permanent makeup is something that is allowed, that is something that is an accessory to a beauty shop type use, that is something that can go forward. We do see differences. From our perspective, it's easy for us to distinguish between the two. The equipment that's used, the types of procedures that are done. So it's not difficult for us. There's not unclarity from staff's point of view. Now, that being said, City Council, you are the policymakers, and we want to have that discussion if you wish at some future date. But that's not the question today. Today's question is whether or not tattoos should be allowed in the PV zone. But we're happy to come back and have that discussion to explain what our thoughts are on this, why we see that there's a difference. We do see that there is a difference, that there is enough of a difference that it's not difficult for us to distinguish between the two.
the other thing I'd like to add to that is that in looking at the minutes from the Planning Commission, the vote was 3-3 until the chair voted and made it a 4-3. So it's not as black and white as maybe it's being presented tonight, maybe to staff, but those of us on the council who've brought up questions, as well as those on the Planning Commission reading those notes, those minutes, that to me there's enough cloudiness for the discussion to need to be had. My other, probably a larger concern is just understanding how much the applicant is aware of their options. And I know that both you and Alex have mentioned that you've spoken with the applicant a number of times, and the applicant is very well aware of the options that are presented. I know that I'm sure that the applicant reached out to more than one of us on the council at some time in the past about this, but I would really like to understand how much the applicant knows about what their options really are in order to make a decision on this. I do agree with Councilmember Morris, and I believe Councilmember Thomas in the work meeting, saying that we're not really interested necessarily in adding any type of use for a blanket purpose. I don't think that's the expectation or the desire of anybody on the council, but I think understanding the intent and what is available to residents who want to have a business here, or folks who want to purchase land and have a certain type of business, just making sure that there's clarity there. And so I just think that it's not as black and white as maybe it's being presented when there are, 4-3 vote, and then 3 of us at least bringing up questions tonight just to want more clarity. So I just wanted to make sure that was noted.
Thank you. Certainly we've included the minutes. The vote is there. We're not trying to paint this as a picture that there wasn't a lot of discussion. We've mentioned there was 2 meetings worth of discussion. So we certainly appreciate that. There's no intent from staff to try to paint this as something that didn't have a lot of discussion. We've been very clear that it did have a lot of discussion at Planning Commission. By including the minutes, we wanted to make sure you had that discussion. I will say though that this is the standard of review is reasonably debatable, and in any kind of reasonably debatable standard, reasonable people can disagree. And from staff's point of view, we do have an opinion. We're going to give you our professional opinion from a zoning standpoint. We have that opinion. That is our recommendation to you. That doesn't mean that we haven't listened and we haven't worked through this with others. We've looked at this very closely. That's important to us to do. But we do have a recommendation, and we do that is our recommendation to you tonight, is that this, again, this particular request should be denied. If we want to have that additional discussion, which is also something that the Planning Commission highly recommended the council have, is that additional policy discussion, maybe outside of this particular application, to talk about how we're applying this. Is this the appropriate way to apply this or not? That's perfectly good, and we'd be happy to do that at a future meeting or at some other convenient time for the council.
I believe that's the dignity index in action. Okay. Any other questions?
Statement maybe. I'm not sure what can happen in a PB, except I do know salons are allowed and whatever you want.
51 other uses.
The weird stuff that I don't get. But it would be nice to know, to me, we're making a decision. This specific decision affects every PB, not just where they're at. And so that creates concern to me. But I believe it would be nice to hear at a future time what is allowed so we understand that makes sense. Or maybe we say, well, how this sticks out weirdly. You know, I don't know.
Sure. I think if nothing else, we've had that discussion. I think it's been a good discussion about, do we need to look at all the uses in the PB zone and determine whether or not there's others that we feel maybe are incompatible.
Well, yeah.
Have some history with the PB zone and what's been approved there. I think going back to the original point in the work meeting, though, again, this particular request is right. The result of some things that happened in the past, right? I want to make sure we don't lose focus of that there were some decisions made to try to accommodate something that had been done really that wasn't allowed. And we've tried to accommodate that. And I want to be really careful that we don't make a zoning decision based on that. That should not be the reason for this policy decision. So
I agree.
Okay. Sure. This is your discussion at this point before we open it up.
Thanks, Mayor. I remember we had discussions about ducks and pigs and remember that? How many ducks we can allow and how many?
I do.
And you did you surveyed cities. You went out and you said, all right, South Jordan does this and Orem does this, and they look at. Have we done a similar?
Yeah, I think what we found is, every city's a little bit different, but quite a few cities put these tattoo uses in their industrial zones. I think Layton is unique in that it's allowed in our CH zone, which is our broadest commercial zone. Lots and lots of acreage, 358 acres. Sometimes you'll see cities that have, smaller zoning areas, or they're confined to some of those more industrial areas. And I think, that's part of, as we look at this use and evolve as cities, again, that's something we need to look at. But I think in terms of where we allow them already, I think that Layton has a lot of areas already allowed for tattoo establishments. And that's one reason for our recommendation is that, again, as we look at the broader question of do we need to add additional zones for this particular use, as we look at the CH zone, we have 368 acres of CH zone property today, and we haven't seen a great deal of pressure from this particular use to be located in other places, except for this particular instance. So I think that's where we want to be really careful about. Do we already have enough supply for this zone? Is this the zone again? Is this the zone that it makes sense to expand to if we're going to expand the zoning? Our recommendation is we should look at some other zones if we're going to do that would allow for, again, other opportunities without kind of changing the complete nature of what this PB zone is supposed to be.
Yeah, I guess if back to the question of if someone came in tomorrow and said, I want to open a business that just does permanent makeup, what we would do in the PB zone.
Yeah,
and with
typically
that,
we've seen those at the beauty shop. I guess we'd have to look at that. I don't know if we've seen that before. I'd have to check with our business license staff, but the ones that I'm aware of are ones that were associated with a beauty shop use. There could be one that I'm missing, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm giving that definitive answer, but that typically the ones we've seen have a beauty shop associated with them of some kind of beautician.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Council, you ready to open this up for our public comment at this time? If so, I need to entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
I make a motion that we open it up to public hearing.
Thank you very much. Okay, the time is now yours. Anyone in the audience that wish to make a comment regarding this particular item on our public hearing, you're more than welcome to. Once again, step up to the podium and state your name and what city you're from. Okay. Seeing that there's no comment at this time, then council, I'll bring it back to you for two things. One, if you want to further the discussion, you're more than welcome to, but immediately after, I ask that you close the public hearing and then take action on item A of our public hearing, which is the proposed amendment. So with that, council, it's your opportunity.
Another thought, maybe, it sounds like from the staff, professional staff's point of view, that there's not a difference. There is a difference, huge difference, big difference in the permanent makeup and tattoo, body art. And so if we have another discussion, a policy discussion, and we end up agreeing to some level that no, there's not a difference, or we're okay with those being similar applications, and tonight we say, well, not in the PB zone, then what happens moving forward? Does that make sense?
In other words, the implications to this particular applicant?
If you just say, you know what, we're not doing it, it's not going to be part of it, but then later on we decide through discussions, well, we've not necessarily changed our mind, but we've had this policy discussion, we've come to an agreement that, they're similar. Just maybe a thought for the council.
Because typically when we deny an application, they have to wait a year, correct? Is that where you're?
I'm talking about just the applicant, but just the implication of voting on tonight.
Right. Okay.
I want to just maybe offer a little bit more. You'd said some words that I want to make sure where we're at on this. You used words like huge and gigantic and enormous. I want to make sure I didn't use those. We see a difference, and that's the key here. Is there's a difference between these uses. What matter of degree that is, I think that is where that reasonably debatable. But for us, what I was trying to say from the staff's point of view is that there's enough of a difference that it's not difficult for us to distinguish between the two. It's not hard at all. We can make that call very easily and say this is this and this is this, and it's not difficult for us from a regulatory standpoint. It's actually pretty straightforward. So that's what I'm trying to say is that this is something that we feel the issue in this case is that it's just not right for every property that's zone PB. That's the issue. The other issue is, as you asked before, I think, Bettina, you asked, has the applicant had their other options explained to them? Yes. Do they like those other options? I think not. I think that's, some of those require them acquiring property from an adjacent property owner, going back through a zone change process. All of those things would be supported by the general plan, though, is if they were to get some additional property. Property that surrounds this particular parcel is property that could be incorporated because it's parking and other uses that could easily be incorporated in the parcel. So, we've had those discussions. I think that's that's something that definitely has occurred. I want to make sure you know that this has come as a result of many discussions with the applicant.
Okay, does that answer your questions? Are you ready to take action? Remember to close the public hearing, though?
Yes, I'd like to close the public hearing. So done, is that all we need to do? Ooh, we got to use so done. So done. All right. I would also like to, can't think of the term, to turn down the proposed amendment to change the zoning, Title 19 zoning, Chapter 1906 Land Use Regulation. Am I reading the right thing? Tables 616263. Denying. Wait a minute. What does it say? Propose amendments. Whatever I want to do, I want to turn it down. Okay. That way, all PBs will stay the same.
So you move to deny the proposed text amendment.
Whatever you said.
Okay.
Yes, is that okay for me to do that? Okay.
Is there a second on this? Is there a friendly amendment to this proposal? Seeing that there's no action, council, do you want to weigh in on what our choices are at this point?
I think the recommendations would be 1 to deny and 1 to send back to staff with a recommendation to make a change to the code. We'd have to go back and do it and start over the process because we don't have an ordinance to approve today.
Okay, does that help with any amendment to what Councilman Thomas's motion was?
I will make amendment if I didn't realize we could do that we go back and that we are more involved with the, what do you call it, what's allowed in PB and that makes sense.
Okay.
I'll let our council weigh in on this as well, but I just want to be really cautious that we have an application for a certain decision tonight, and I think that that's a good discussion to have, and we're happy to have that. But if there is a direction back to staff to look at something else, we'd like to have maybe that narrowed down a little bit to this application. This is a specific application asking for a change to the PB standards to allow tattoos in all PB zone properties.
Is his motion still?
Right now, right now that's on what's on the table.
Okay, I will second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny our public hearing discussion tonight. So I will do a roll call vote with that. I'll start with Councilmember Thomas.
See, let me think. I agree with Councilman Member Thomas.
Okay, Councilmember Smith Edmondson.
Nay.
Councilman Morris.
I'm going to say, from what you just mentioned, the fact that we don't know. I'd rather be safe and not knowing, but we don't know about all of the PB zones and all of the areas, and the decision made tonight that allows it for everywhere, with us not really knowing what we are agreeing to or what the policy is. I'd rather be safe on that side, and that's why I'll vote yes. But I want to have a further discussion and clarity, as Councilmember Smith Edmondson has explained. I'd like to have that soon and come to an agreement of what's allowed and where it's allowed. And I think that would be helpful, not just for the land use, but for business owners and to keep Layton business friendly, and to make sure that we stay up with things that are changing. And if the PB zone isn't where it's allowed, figure out, once we decide what the policy is, then we can decide on the zoning. So, but I understand the urgency of I get what you were having to vote on tonight, but at the same time, we need to have a deeper policy dive on this.
Okay. Councilmember Bloxham.
Nay.
That's a nay?
Nay.
Nay. Interesting predicament we're in.
May I, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, can you speak louder if you could, just so we can understand? Councilmember Bloxham?
I'm not really treating this as a specific, all the history that we talked about. I'm thinking of this more in a broad terms, as if it is a text amendment for the PB zone. And I don't know if I've heard enough from the information that's been presented to why there is a distinction, other than the specific mentioned about the process, some of the concerns that were mentioned. So I would like to have more information as to the PV zone in general. And I'm not sure that we get that with regards to this tattoo question if we simply deny its application. And so my question maybe is, can you maybe restate what our options would be, and if there is a time sensitivity to deciding this now, or if there's a way for us to potentially have a more discussion when both Councilmember Roberts and myself are present, because I'm not able to see any of the maps, and I want to be clear about why voting the way I do, but I want to make sure that I have everything in front of me as well. And so I'm left with the decision where I either have to deny, vote no, or abstain. And I'm not sure that really does much. So that's where I'm at on this.
Okay, I'm not sure if we all heard that very well, but Council, I'm going to have you weigh in on this, but I believe what he's trying to say is he just feels like this needs to have a further discussion before the vote is actually
And that's
concealed. So, and could we actually bring this, even though there's a motion on the table here and a second, if Councilmember Thomas is willing to accept an amendment that we change this, can we? So that we
Yes.
can then have a further discussion before we actually take action on this item.
And I do apologize to the council that I didn't give that third option. So that is an option that you can table it and have a discussion, and we can bring it back for a further discussion. So.
Okay, and with that, we would need a date certain so that then the applicant is aware of it and knowing that we wanted a further discussion before anything is.
I would remind the council though that staff is here. I mean, they're here to answer questions on this. We've gone through it twice already. We've answered lots of questions. So on the issue at hand of doing the amendment, I mean, we've already gone through that. The staff's here to answer questions. We can do it now. So if you have questions now, we can do it. Keep asking questions and try to get clarity, because that's kind of what Bloxham, Councilman Bloxham indicated, is that he didn't have a lot of clarity, but we're here to add. Well, here's the time.
Or what I think his second point to that was that, one, we don't have Councilmember Roberts weighing in here, and then he himself is not real clear on all of this. So I think that's really the reason why they feel like we need to table it and then bring it back for further discussion.
That for sure is an option if we want to amend the motion.
Yeah, let me just at least. Sorry, I get a lot of feedback. I can hear myself talking on the record. But seeing that we're deadlocked at 2-2 with the council, I think not having Councilmember Roberts in attendance, I think we owe it, if we have a discussion like this, to have him be a part of the discussion and the vote.
Mayor, may I?
Sure, let's continue this discussion. Go ahead.
So, Councilmember Bloxham, what does Tyson? What does Councilmember Roberts? What are we going to talk about? As in the same decision we're talking about tonight, or the policy decision?
I think it's one and the same. I didn't hear the reason why Bettina voted no. I'm voting no. I'm not convinced that this is okay and all needs no.
Do you mind restating that again?
Yeah.
It got very jargled on our side.
Yeah, hold on. Okay, let me try this again. I didn't hear the reasoning why Bettina voted no. And so I can't speak for her. I can only speak for myself in that I'm just thinking of this as a single application because it's going to have the effect of being a change for the entire city. And I'm not convinced that it's distinguishable. But I am also okay having some additional discussion because I can't see some of the maps and some of the things that have been presented in the meeting. They're not in the packet. Where, like, you know, I wasn't able to see some of the things that Chad was providing. And so I don't have all the information that those are in attendance have, and we haven't had Councilman Roberts at all. So it was more just a third option, not necessarily saying it's the option I think I would choose. It's just the one that we still have other than just approving or denying it tonight. That's all.
And the maps, as you mentioned, part of my vote is that there are PB zones throughout the entire city in farmlands and middle of neighborhoods and different places, not around a commercial zone like what the applicant is talking about.
Right, and that's just not information that I can't see that obviously, and so if we're kind of the discussion was we needed to decide this tonight. We've already decided it twice, but it's hard for me to decide it when all I can do is hear. I can't see, other than reading the packet, reading the minutes, reading the staff report, which I've done. And so I would like to see the full presentation, if that's possible.
Okay, I think I clearly understand this now. So I believe, okay, before I make my statement, I see that Smith Edmondson would like to defend herself here or state a reason.
No, I actually would like to change my vote. And the reason for that is I clearly understand that we don't want to make decisions that are going to, for lack of a better term, encumber these zones in other spaces. I expressed my concern earlier, which is why I didn't explain my vote the second time, but my main concern was for this applicant, but also any other applicant who might question why a salon or beauty shop could do something similar to what this tattoo shop would want to do and cannot. That is a different discussion than tonight. And specifically because this lot that we are voting on is surrounded by the zone that it should be, the zone that it should have stayed to begin with, which is really why this is a complex situation tonight. None of us, we're here to help make that decision happen. And so it's similar to another situation we had last year where something happened that probably should not have happened, and then it puts us in a position where we're not certain how we want to proceed. I will change my vote to aye with Councilmember Thomas's denial of the text change to this amendment, with the expectation, as has been mentioned, that we discuss not just PB, but these types of uses and what zones are appropriate for them. Because as Chad, you've mentioned, it's very clear to staff the difference between, permanent makeup tattoo versus design art tattoo. It's not as clear to the rest of us, regardless of the type of materials that are used, the type of equipment that is used. There was discussion even in the minutes how there could be less traffic for these types of establishments versus a salon or a barber shop or a beauty shop, etc. So having a more robust discussion around zoning types and business types that are now prevalent that were not in the past, I think is very prudent for us as a growing city, as the largest city in the county, to have those. But for the purposes of tonight, I will vote yes.
Okay. And that's legal, right? Because I have not ruled on it yet. So I know I'm totally legal. Okay. So the way it sits right now, I have 3 in favor and 1 against, considering I have 4 council members here, which does give me the majority to go ahead and rule that this public hearing, what am I trying to say? That it does pass as far as a denial. So with that, that was really our last, and I do entertain the fact that it was called for a close of our public hearing. So that means our public hearing is closed and action has been taken. That brings us down to any unfinished business. Council, do you have any unfinished business you'd like to share with anyone at this time? Or anybody else on the dais? If there's anything you'd like to share, I'd allow you a moment. If not, then I will.
May I?
Sure.
I just forgot to make one announcement. One of our residents called me earlier this week to remind the council and also for the audience that the Mayor Brent Taylor Gala is on November 8th, 2024. It'll be held in Ogden at the Ogden Eccles Conference Center. And that's to, I believe it's a scholarship that is now being offered, as well as a gala in remembrance of Mayor Taylor, who was also a member of our armed forces, who was a fallen soldier. And so I did tell the resident that I would make that announcement tonight, and I forgot to do that at the beginning. So thank you.
Okay, that's a great lead in. And in addition to that, I want to also acknowledge the fact that we do have our Veterans Parade coming up in November. We will have one meeting prior to that, but any applicant that wish to participate in that parade, we ask that you go ahead and fill out the application. I believe the application is online on a Facebook page posted by Dennis Howland that you need to fill out and submit back to him. And I'm not sure if Parks and Rec is also receiving them or not, but certainly they are? Okay, great. But certainly this is a fantastic opportunity for us to really show our patriotism and our support for those folks that are willing to put their lives on the line. And if anything, if you do not want to participate in the parade, please come attend it. We really need to see people line the street and show our respect to these folks. So with that, the last thing I'll also say, knowing that we have an election, this is an election year, and your ballots have now been mailed out, so hopefully everyone will take the time to vet their candidates and be sure to vote on them and make sure you get your ballots back in the mail by the postmark date so that they can be counted. Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate everyone's patience tonight and certainly a lively discussion, which I think was educational for all. So with that, have a happy Halloween.